All right, what up, guys? We are live. So we got Miss Pixie Love joining us for a juicy debate or maybe discussion. We'll kind of see how it goes. But yeah, thanks for coming. Appreciate you. Being cool with the reschedules. I know I had to switch things up a few times. But yeah, do you want to start off with giving a little quick introduction about who you are and what you do?
Hi, I'm Pixie. I usually just debate online on Twitch. I'm a live streamer. So I usually just talk about like relationships, politics, all sorts of stuff on stream. And yeah, that's what I mostly do.
Cool. Would you identify as a feminist?
Yes, I do identify as a feminist, which I know is very contentious for a lot of people, but I'm not that crazy, I promise.
Also, because my dog's also a feminist, so you guys would get along.
What's your dog's name?
His name is Rhaegar.
Rhaegar. I like that name. Good feminist name.
Yeah, solid feminist name, Game of Thrones. By the way, guys, if you want to see more of Rhaegar, I know a lot of you guys are like low-key Rhaegar fans. He now has his own TikTok. It's called Rhaegar and Luna. It's narrated by my girlfriend, and it's actually really, really, really funny. And all you do is just see nonstop Rhaegar. He has a voice. He's a character. It's really funny stuff. So if you guys want to have a good laugh, then go on TikTok, Rhaegar and Luna. It's really, really funny stuff. I'm actually really proud of her. All right, so let's start off with this question. I think this could be a good idea to flesh out like kind of where you stand. Because I'll be honest, I watched a little bit of your content, but I don't know that much about you. So let's just start off with this simple question. What are some things that you agree and disagree with the pickup/manosphere community on?
Okay, so this really depends on who I'm talking to, obviously, because there's like two pickup artists sometimes that they say like exactly the opposite stuff.
Yeah, sure.
In general, I agree that when you want to attract a woman or anyone, and really, like, you should put your best foot forward, right? So you should try to, bring yourself up as much as possible. But then I feel like when people start talking about tactics that I consider like a little bit deceitful, right? Or kind of like too peacocky, then I think that can become a turnoff for women. So for example, there's like certain men who say that you should try to flaunt your wealth. And even though, to be fair, if your goal is to get laid, you might find a gold digger, or you might find somebody who's just interested in wealth. They might sleep with you, right? Just because you're flashing your wealth. But I think like if you're looking for a real, genuine relationship, then doing something like that is not going to find you the woman you want, because the woman that you want is probably going to think like, oh no, like that's a little bit shallow, or is that all this person has to them? Or if they're like in a similar like socioeconomic class, they're going to be like, okay, like that doesn't really impress me. Congrats, you have money. I have money too. What else do you have? And I also think what women look for towards like most is experiences. So they want somebody who can be like interesting. They want somebody who can bring them like something new, basically, that they haven't seen before. And although money can often give those opportunities, it's not a surefire way. Like, I don't think it's a surefire way to be in a relationship, basically, just having a lot of cash, or at least a genuine relationship.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, I certainly would never advocate for people to flaunt their wealth. Also, that's not as impressive in first world countries unless you're going for gold diggers. In a third world country, it can be quite effective, but then again. So I agree with you on that. What are some of the other tactics that you think are deceitful?
I think lying about like I don't know. I feel like this really depends on what area I am in. But I feel just lying in general, talking about like basically a false background or acting like you have more experiences than you really do. I think women can pick up on that, especially after having like a conversation where they're just like, okay, well, maybe this person isn't being like as authentic as they are, or lying about wanting to be in a relationship just to try to get like this woman to be like more interested in you, just to end up sleeping with them at the end of the day, right? I think that's just going to lead to a lot of drama. It's probably not going to lead to the results that you want in the long term. And then if that woman has friends, like, good luck getting with any of them, because they're all going to know your reputation now that you're like a dishonest person. So I feel like in general, you should not lie about your background or lie about your intentions with a person.
Yeah, fair enough. Would you say that applies to women as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think so many of our problems when it comes to relationships in general is just people not wanting to be like straightforward and honest where they're at. And then that creates false expectations, false hopes. And it just ends up blowing up in everybody's faces because everybody ends up being like disappointed and upset that they couldn't get what they wanted.
I mean, I agree with everything you just said. Well, let me ask you this. Do you think any types of lies are okay from an ethical perspective?
Any types of lies? Yes, there are certain lies, but it's like more in extreme situations, right? So for example, if you're lying to save someone's life, Or if you're lying because like this other person needs like food or something, you can like cover for them, right? So I think when it comes to like basic necessities, basically like well-being, there are certain scenarios where lying is okay. But I think in terms of like creating a stable and healthy relationship, that's just you're setting it up for failure if you don't start with honesty.
The way I kind of break it down, you can tell me if you agree or disagree with this, is there's two categories of lies. There's white lies and there's significant lies. So an example of a white lie would be like if you and I have a date and I'm like 10 minutes late because I had really bad diarrhea and I was just stuck in the toilet. And instead of telling you that, I just say I got into some traffic. That's a white lie. A significant lie would be kind of what you mentioned earlier. If you say, what are you looking for? I say, oh, I'm looking for a relationship, but I just want to fuck, right? So the kind of the litmus test that I use is after you guys had sex, if you told her that you were lying about this thing, would she care or not? So if you, after you have sex with a girl and you're like, hey, actually, I just want sex, she would probably care about that. But if you say, hey, listen, actually, the reason I was late is just because I had really bad diarrhea, she probably wouldn't care about that. So that's the litmus test. After sex, would she care about that lie? So another example of that might be something like, for example, let's say you were having sex the night before, right? And the girl asks you like, oh, what were you doing last night? Instead of being like, oh, I was getting laid, you could be like, oh, I was just hanging out, right? It's also a little bit of a white lie because it also would not significantly change her response post-sex. So what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's an interesting litmus test. I've never heard of one like that before. I think that makes sense.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think another one that just makes sense in general is do you think that person is entitled to 100% of that information before they really truly get to know you, right? So I feel like there are certain things that are like private, like let's say even this is a random example, but let's say like medical information, for example, like this is a very extreme example, but like, oh, like, I once had cancer, but like I'm fine now. When you're starting to get to know someone, I don't think they're entitled to all your medical information, right? But like as you get to know them and things get more serious, well then, okay, then they're entitled to more. So I don't think you have to like completely lay out your heart bare when you first meet someone. I think they're just, it reaches a certain point where it's like the more serious you are, the more serious with the truth you should be.
Yeah, I generally agree with that. It is kind of open to interpretation, though, what someone is entitled to, what is not entitled to. You could think that she's not entitled to that, and the girl could think she's entitled to that. But yeah, generally, there's not like there's a big amount of gray on that. Okay, so it seems like we largely agree on this point. Let's move on to this. Let me phrase the question like this: what are the things you specifically disagree with Fresh and Fit on?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. I think the first one, the one that comes up to my top of my head, is that women only or don't basically women don't really have ambition for themselves. They only have ambition to get like with a man so that he can provide all the resources. I think a lot of women have their own ambitions. Yeah, like I think there are certain types of women that only want a provider, but again, that goes back into, I don't want to say gold digger territory, either gold digger or trad wife, which I think are two different things. But even then, those people still have an ambition to have like their family, right? They have an ambition to take care of their children well. And being with a man who like constantly sleeps around 24/7, I do think is like a threat to your family, right? Because they're suddenly introducing like other women into the factor. They're introducing this idea that if they get another woman pregnant, what's going to happen then, right? So I feel like this whole idea that like, oh no, women are totally okay with the guy sleeping around a lot. And then
they said that. They say that really.
They've said that. Yeah, they've said that. What is it? Or they say that a woman should be okay with it, as long as.
But there's a big difference between is and should be, right?
Yes, but they kind of advocate that this is more like the natural state of women, and feminism has like corrupted women into deciding that's not acceptable. When I'm just like, I think the natural state, again, very generalizing statements, but I think for most people, at least in the very least in the United States, it's being monogamous. I don't think most people lean towards like polyamory, basically.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so it's this idea that's like, no, like even without feminism, I think you would still have large swaths of women who would not feel comfortable with men sleeping around with multiple women, even if they was your main partner. Like it doesn't matter. It's still like a threat when you introduce more people who have their own intentions and their own motivations to the relationship, and you should care about that.
I think the one thing that they have a point on, which I agree with, is at least this is how I interpret it, is they're basically saying that women will be way more likely, so, or at least this is the way I see it, is that women, I agree with women generally, don't want a guy who's fucking a bunch of girls. Like generally speaking, most women want a guy who's just fucking them. That's just the general rule of thumb, and there's a bunch of exceptions to that. But women will be more likely to make exceptions if the guy is at high value enough. So someone like Leonardo DiCaprio, right? Like, pretty much every girl that he's dating understands that he's going to be fucking a bunch of girls, right? Or someone like Dan Bilzerian or someone like that. So the basic premise is like, if your value proposition is high enough, you are more likely to find girls who will make an exception for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't completely disagree with that. But I also don't think that necessarily reflects in like women as a whole or total, right? You're more like self-selecting for a certain type of woman once you start getting into that behavior, right? Because any woman who is not okay with that behavior will just walk out, right? I do agree that there's definitely certain types of women who are completely okay with that, or who will look the other eye, like basically like turn away, not really care, because they're getting something else of value, right? They're getting money, they're getting I don't know, a boost in their career, a lot of things. But I think if we're going to talk about like the general population, then yeah, most women don't want to end up with a guy like that, or don't feel very stable or secure in a relationship like that.
So I think you're right. It's not their ideal. They don't want it. It's not their preferences, but it does happen.
Yeah, there's some exceptions
when the value proposition. But yeah, if you ask those women who are dating Leonardo DiCaprio, Dan Bilzerian, hey, do you wish that Leo was exclusive to you? They would almost always say yes. I wish it was, but that's not the case. I think a lot of it just does have to do with the value proposition. So like, let's say like, okay, you're a streamer, right? And let's say like there was a streamer that was like kind of a little bit rude to you, but not really, just a little bit of a dick. But every time you went on their channel, you got 20,000 subscribers. They were like Mr. Beast or something like that. You'd be way more likely to put up with it compared to someone who's like, same clout level as you. Now, everyone will have a breaking point. I'm sure at some point you'll probably like, draw the fence. But the point is that if the value proposition is really high, you're more likely to make exceptions. Like you would prefer someone is nice and respectful to you. But if the value proposition is high, you might be willing to look the other way. I think that's kind of the point that they try to have. I do think they over-exaggerate for how many guys can actually accomplish that. Very few guys can have the value proposition be so high. It's like celebrities and just like influencers, stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of the way I've always interpreted it.
Yeah. And I know that this might be like a, controversial statement, because I know that some people in the Red Pill say there's no such thing as like a high value woman, that it's like only men who can be of value. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
No, I think there's more high value women.
Yeah. So I think that it kind of goes like, if you're a man and you truly want like a high value woman, then displaying those characteristics is going to alienate them or push them away. Because if you're a high value woman, then theoretically speaking, you should be able to find like other high value men, or, the top of the crop or whatever, who also have monogamous tendencies. So you might be a high value man and you might be able to find like beautiful women or something that are willing to overlook that. But if you're looking for like a real committal relationship, long-term, et cetera, you're not going to find that by sleeping around with like 20 million women consistently and then not wanting to like settle down, or basically settling down but then sleeping around on the side. Like that's going to like, most women who are interested in like long-term relationship or in like family building, why fuck with that? Like they're not going to let that threat come into their lives. It wouldn't make sense for them to do, especially if they have a bunch of other men who can fit similar profiles and who have similar values like nearby.
Yeah, so I do think like the definition, the way I define high value man is someone who is generally very attractive to the opposite sex, right? Mm-hmm. And so by that logic, of course, there's going to be some women who are more attractive to men than other women. So by default, there should be higher value and lower value women. So I think, for example, for most guys, it'll be youth, beauty. I think personality for me would be things like intelligence. For a lot of guys, it would be like her sexual experience, her body count, whether she has good like wifey characteristics, cooks, cleans, whatever, right? It can be different, but generally speaking, youth, beauty, character will be like the top three things. So yeah, I do think there's definitely is. Now, in terms of like, are you less likely to get one if you're like promiscuous? Probably to some extent, but I do think there's also another interesting paradigm, which is that women generally don't want to date people who are lower than them when it comes to value. And value can be interpreted differently. Like it could be, she might be okay with dating a guy who's less attractive than her if, for example, he's really charismatic, right? Because everyone places different importance on value. But in her mind, the way she defines value, she's not going to want to settle for someone who has lower value than her. So that kind of creates a high value man, will be in demand. Now, if you're taking one high value man who's like fully down to be monogamous and one, everything else being the same, who doesn't want it, the guy who's down to be monogamous will have an advantage. But there's so few high value men that I think either any kind of high value man will do fine with when it comes to any type of relationship.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think we agree generally on that the more high value you are, the more likely you are to find people who are willing to like let you get away with shit, basically.
Yeah.
That was another thing I disagreed with them on Fresh and Fit, though. There's like a clip of me. I don't know if it's like circling around or whatever. But basically, where I said like a man should theoretically using like their Evo psych, right? What I don't necessarily believe in Evo psych, but they do. If a man is supposed to care about like reproduction and supposed to care about like his lineage and things like that, then theoretically speaking, he should be interested in intelligent women. And they basically were just like, no, that has nothing to do with it. And I'm like, how does that have nothing to do with it? If you're saying that like men, that these behaviors all go back to our biology and that men care about like reproduction and like having their genes like passed on through like millennia, basically, they should want an intelligent woman to help like raise those children. Otherwise, those children are going to become like the bottom of the food barrel, right? Like intelligence is an attribute in our society that helps people rise among the ranks, basically.
Yeah, I think it depends on the guy. Like, I think they legitimately don't give a shit about that. For me, that's something I've always cared about. I think a good amount of guys do. I have never dated a girl that was like dumb. I've dated every type of, or most types of ethnicities and whatevers, but never a girl that's dumb. So for me, that's something when it comes for sex, I don't give a fuck. But for dating, yeah, I want a girl who's equal to my intelligence, or somewhat equal, or ideally higher. So I do think it just depends on the guy. But yeah, some guys just legitimately don't give a shit. But also a lot of that comes down to is what do you see the role of a girlfriend or wife in your life? Like a lot of the like red pill guys basically see it as like a very transactional thing where it's like the girl gives me sex, she cooks, she cleans, she doesn't talk too much. That's kind of what I want in a wife. And like for example, someone like me would see it a little bit more differently. I would see it's like, okay, is this someone that I can have a really, really good time with? Is this someone that adds value to my life in ways that are not easily replaceable? Like I can always hire a cleaning lady, I can always hire a chef, but I can't really hire a girl who, for example, I can't really hire someone that makes me feel really good or makes me laugh or I have a really good time with or I can share memories with. So I think a lot of it just has to do with how you look at a relationship. But I do truly believe that for fresh and fit guys, they don't really care about a woman's intelligence.
Yeah, I think that's sad personally, but that's my own opinion. Everyone's entitled to live like the life that makes them happiest.
Yeah. So what are some other things you disagree with fresh and fit on?
Other than the intelligence thing, other than the whole value thing. I disagree with the idea that women are more emotional and men are more logical. And that's the natural order of things. I think women are allowed to display certain emotions more than men. But I think what that leads to is that leads to either men like internalizing or externalizing their emotions to extreme in like the form of anger, right? So that either like when you have a society that constantly tells men you can't display emotion, you can't display emotion, you can't display emotion, they still feel those emotions. It's still it's literally, if we're going to talk about biology, it's a natural human thing for everybody to feel emotion. And very important reasons behind that too that we can talk about soon. But if you're conditioned to constantly never express that outside to the real world, you're either going to, sorry, in extreme terms, end up like a school shooter or end up like offing yourself, right? So I think this whole idea that men are like naturally more stoic or, men cannot show this like emotion. Men can't show emotion because like our society has like conditioned them to that and has conditioned women to also not value men who show emotion. But that's not necessarily like the natural order of things. I think we can definitely like end up living in a society where we treat emotions in a lot more healthier manner and where we don't like necessarily put this like broad stroke of like emotion equals bad, equals feminine, whatever. That helps us like live healthier lives for both genders.
Okay, there's some things you said that I agree with and some things I might disagree with. Would you agree that men and women are less emotional in different ways? Like, for example, men might be way more prone to anger and rage, right? So in that sense, men are more emotional than women. When it comes to like crying and sadness, men have less of that, right? So it's not that they're more or less emotional; they just generally tend to gravitate towards different types of emotions. Will you agree with that?
I agree with that, but with a caveat that like I don't know how much, and I really don't have the answer for this. I don't know how much of this is taught versus like biologically ingrained. And the reason why I say that is because like, ever since, and I'm Puerto Rican, I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, like very Hispanic culture, obviously. Hispanic culture.
So you're not lying.
Huh?
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, keep going.
No, si quieres puedo hablar español, pero tengo acento de gringa y eso es porque hablo en inglés. Pero, yeah, so I wonder how much of it is the fact that from boys from a young age are taught, like, don't cry, like, that's weak, that's being a sissy, that's being like a girl, versus when they show like acts of rage or when they show acts of like, you know, more aggression that way, that's like, he's just being a man, he's just being a boy, you know, boys being boys. But I do agree, as things currently stand, it seems like a different gravitation. I just don't know how much of it is. Oh, also when women show displays of anger, you're not being very ladylike. That's not what a lady does. Like, you're being very, like, you know, unlady, basically. So I wonder how much is biology and how much is sociology, basically.
Well, anger is a bad look even for men. Like, if a guy gets angry on a podcast, he'll get clowned, right? That's like typically when you're doing a debate, like, and you're a guy and you get angry. It doesn't matter if you're a guy or girl. People just think, oh, he's losing his shit, she's losing her shit. In terms of like how much of it is nature versus nurture, I mean, there's no real answer to that. I personally think it's a combination of both. It seems that the red pillars think that it's close to all nature and nurture plays very little role. Feminists seem to think it's either mostly or all nurture. Again, I don't really think there's any answer to that, but there are some interesting studies that show that men and women's brains are kind of different in some ways, and the parts that are responsible for certain like social things are larger in women. When it comes to certain logical things, men have tenderly more activity in that area. So yeah, the brains are different, but I'm sure nurture plays a role. But I don't know which side of that would you agree with that? That's probably some reasonable combination of both nature and nurture.
Yeah, I agree that some combination of nature and nurture. I don't necessarily agree with like the logical emotional thing, the way that you described it, but I feel like that's just me getting into pedantic semantics, like, you know, very like small things. I don't know if it's like worth talking about. So I think like in general, like, you know, it is different, but nature versus nurture reasons like that contribute to that.
Yeah, I can show you a study later if you want. This is coming just directly from like MRI scans. But okay, so here's a take you might disagree with. I do believe that generally speaking, you should be less emotional than your girl to have a stable relationship as a guy. It doesn't mean you can't show emotions, doesn't mean you can't ever show emotions. But if you're in a situation where you're being more emotional than her and she has to be the one that's grounded, she's the rock, then that relationship is doomed. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Ooh, I strongly disagree. I think everybody should basically take turns, and at the end of the day, maybe it should be like closer to 50-50. I think if your woman or your girlfriend or whatever is constantly being the rock, then you're going to run into problems, right? Because I think any relationship where one person has to take the majority, like logical role or whatever, that gets tiring. Like, people are flawed, people are not perfect, people, you know, mess up all the time. I think what is going to determine if a relationship is going to work or not is if both people basically have like a growth mindset versus like a fight mindset. So basically, if a problem comes, like both people are trying their best to think, how can we resolve this? Like, what steps can we take into the future to make things better? Like, where did we both go wrong? And, you know, sometimes one person might be more emotional than the other, but it should be close to 50-50. So I think if the woman is constantly being emotional and the guy is the one who's like constantly having to like logic things out, I don't know. I have doubts of how strong that relationship is going to be in the future, or if the person doesn't get tired. But that's from my personal opinion.
Yeah, so I do agree with you about the growth mindset thing. I think that's kind of a side point, but I do agree with you on that. But I think you might misunderstand what I mean when I say emotional. I don't mean like one person is like always making the decisions and shit. I just mean that like, okay, like the person who I say is more emotional is the one that's constantly like in a state of like mental or emotional crisis, and the other person has to be the rock. They have to ground that person. They have to be like, hey, listen, it's gonna be okay. Don't worry about it. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with occasionally as a man being in a state of crisis. But if generally speaking, the dynamic is that the girl has to be more grounded and more of the rock than you, then I think that relationship is doomed. And I think a lot of that has to do with, again, another thing you might disagree with me on is I think relationships generally speaking, work better when the guy is the more masculine one, the woman's more feminine one. So if you force the woman to take on more masculine roles, like, you know, being very grounded, like having to assure you, having to initiate sex, whatever, it could be any number of things, then she's going to lose attraction for you. So I think that's the problem with that.
I don't know. I don't think we agree here. I think probably, I'm trying to know how to phrase this because this is going to get like 20 times more complicated. I think in general, as long as both partner, like, I don't know. I think this whole idea of like, oh yeah, the woman has to be the more emotional one, the man has to be the more logical one. And generally speaking, right? That's what you're saying. And if the roles,
think of the word grounded instead of logical.
okay, grounded. The man has to be more grounded, and the woman can be more emotional. And just generally speaking, throughout the relationship, there could be exceptions in the relationship, but generally speaking, the men have to be more grounded. I'm not a man. I can't speak for men in general, right? I don't think anyone really, well, we can try our best, right? But I think even then, you're putting a lot of burden onto the guy to keep his cool, like the majority of time. And I think that burden should be placed on both women and men equally. And I think like that's like how you create like a very or the most healthiest type of relationship. Because then otherwise you kind of create like a hierarchical like balance when it comes to I don't say problem solving, but yeah, like solving like problems in a relationship or deciding like who is valid or who is not, because you're basically saying the guy is the one who has to be most grounded most of the time. So chances are what he's thinking is going to be more valid than like an unemotionally sound woman.
No, not that. Because if you're, even if you're in a very emotional state, you're never going to be like, oh, well, this person's more logical than me, therefore they're right. People always think they're right, especially when they're in an emotional state. Right, which is why being a good communicator is a key part of a relationship, right? If your girl, for example, is in a very emotional state and she's very upset about something, you can't just logic her out of it, right? You have to kind of meet her where she's at. Let's do like a little thought experiment. So, roughly speaking, how many relationships have you been in your life?
First ones. I would say like 3 or 4.
Okay, 3 or 4. I'm at 5. Okay, so we're pretty close. So, out of those relationships, was there any one, and just be brutally honest, where the guy was more emotional than you?
Or the guy was more emotional than me.
Where you had to constantly reassure him, you had to be the grounded one.
Yes.
How long did that relationship last?
It lasted a couple months, but I think okay, so here's the thing. I think this applies towards like women as well. I think any dynamic where there's somebody that you're constantly having to reassure, in my opinion, it's doomed to fail. And this goes like into like anxious like attachment. Do you know about like attachment styles?
Sort of.
Okay, so do you want me to talk about them? I don't know if you're gonna get bored if I talk about this.
No, you can go over it really quickly.
Okay, so basically the way that your parents raise you, obviously like how much affection they give you, how much they withhold, if they're very strict, if they're very not, affects how attached you get to other people later on in life, right? And there's some attachment styles that are like very it's called like anxious insecure, basically, where the other person constantly needs reassurance, constantly needs like affection, like constantly needs to be like told that everything is okay and everything's good. And like these people, the chances of their relationship like going off the rails and like not really being functional is pretty damn high. And the reason for that is because I don't think people in general, or people like that in general, are ready to be in relationships, whether it be men or women. I think you might be onto something when you say like, oh, in general, like there's a lot of dynamics where the woman is the one who's like needing more reassuring, the man is more grounded. And I think that's because like a lot of men are willing to get into relationships with women that maybe they shouldn't, because it's like basically what society tells us to do. And a lot of times, right? Like, oh, you're gonna find a lot of fulfillment and meaning in a relationship, right? So I
just as on a personal level, I definitely would disagree with that. I would say that every single girl I've ever dated, I've was more grounded and like less like emotionally volatile than her. But I don't regret a single one of those decisions. They were like all great girls. But yeah, like I just know that, you know, my girlfriend, as awesome as she is, will have periods in her life where she'll get a little bit emotional and she might get a little bit upset about something that she later will say is no biggie, right? I've just made peace with that. It is what it is. You know, if it happens every day, yeah, that would be like no bueno. But if it happens once every 2 months or so, you know, it kind of is what it is. So yeah, I mean, I just think that's just kind of the reality. I don't think that makes her a bad partner, as long as the frequency isn't like insanely high.
Yeah. I don't think having like insecurities in general makes you a bad partner. I just think having a dynamic where it's like generally you the majority of time being like irrational or being the one like off the rails, I think that's where we get into dangerous territory. But as long as it's not like that most of the time, I think I'll be fine. I think I don't know. Do you feel like she in general is the much more emotional one and you're the much more grounded one?
Generally, yes.
And comparing, if you feel comfortable, comparing her to like your previous partners, do you feel like she has like a lower or higher like versatility of emotion?
Probably about average. I tend to date more like grounded, like kind of chill girls. So she's probably right average. She's like every girl I've ever dated in terms of emotional volatility. Yeah, like somewhere right in the middle.
Okay, so not like super out there, but not super low.
No, I would actually say my girlfriend is way less emotionally volatile than the average girl, and potentially even the average guy.
Interesting. Okay, because I think like
I think my
relationship.
girlfriend is way less emotional than like Myron or something like that.
Then who?
Than like Myron, from Fresh and
Hmm.
Fit. Like I would
Yeah,
mention, she's a lot less emotional than him from what I've seen.
yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Oh, I think yeah, I don't really know what to comment exactly on this. I think well, I think that kind of like we're kind of in agreement there. Then the less emotionally volatile a person is, the higher chances of a relationship succeeding because people can actually like talk through their emotions and like be in a level of stability versus volatility.
Yeah, let me walk the question back because I think we have to bring it back a little bit. So, do you think women generally value masculine qualities when it comes to dating? And I say generally, I don't mean like entirely. Would you agree with that or disagree with that?
Oh, generally, yes, I think so.
Okay. Okay. So we're in agreement on that. Okay, good. So what are like let's kind of like do a thought whatever like a thought experiment. What are some masculine qualities? I would say that being assertive is one of them, right? I would say another one is being sexually dominant, right? That could be another one. And I would say also another one is being grounded and being stoic. That's also something that's traditionally considered masculine, and like something like being emotionally volatile is not considered masculine. So therefore, it would be beneficial as a guy if you are less emotionally volatile. It doesn't mean like I don't take a hardline position like Fresh and Fit does, which is like you can never talk about your emotions with your girlfriend, or you can never like I don't agree with any of that. I'm just talking about in terms of generalities. I've just personally never seen a relationship work where the guy was more emotionally volatile than the girl, at
Yeah,
least
I
for
think
different periods of time.
Yeah, I think okay, so this is gonna get interesting because I think women say that they want masculine qualities, but then when guys actually completely display those masculine qualities, women don't really like it completely. So let me I think this specifically relates to like emotional volatility. I don't want to paint you in a position that you didn't say, but I think like a lot of men think like, oh, like I have to be stoic, like that's a manly quality, that's what women want. And then when I talk to my like fellow friends that are like women and stuff, and they're complaining about their boyfriends, what they always say is like he won't talk to me about how he feels. And most of this ends up in broken relationships, right? Most of this ends up being like exes because this relationship doesn't last very long. But they're like, yeah, like I keep trying to talk to him about how I feel. And he's just like, yes, like, okay, like he's not really talking to me about how he feels. So I feel like I constantly have to guess. I feel like, suddenly out of nowhere, he's like exploding on me, like upset at me about something. And it's like, if you just were more emotional earlier on, right? In the sense of being able to express your emotions, being able to explain what you think, being able to be vulnerable in that way, things would have ended up a lot better. Like we could have actually like talked through our problems, and we could have actually like reached an agreement. Versus, oh no, you're keeping it in because you want to be stoic, because you want to be stoic, because you want to be stoic, and then suddenly like having it like blow up in your face.
Okay, so generally agree being emotionally stunted or cut off from your emotions is not a positive when it comes to dating. But here's the the kind of disconnect here. Emotional vulnerability is not the same thing as being emotionally volatile,
I
right?
agree. I
Like
think
like very, not very, but I'm somewhat emotionally vulnerable, but I'm not emotionally volatile at all, right? So there is a healthy way to express your emotions, which is in a calm kind of present way. And that doesn't. So yes, you're right. A lot of girls are unhappy the fact that their guys are just completely emotionally cut off. That's not a good thing. But that's not what I'm advocating for. I'm just saying like don't freak out more than your girl. It's basically the premise of my argument.
Yeah. Okay, I can agree with that. I just don't think if it's the reason I'm like so hesitant about this is because I don't think it's healthy for men to be okay with a woman who's like volatile. But I think if they're in similar levels of volatility, then it's fine. And if those levels of volatility and ideally are like low, right? Because I think this just goes back to whether a person is ready to be in a relationship or not. And if you can't like generally keep your cool, you don't have to be perfect, but generally speaking, keep your cool, you're probably, whether you're a woman or a man, not ready for a relationship. I feel like you're doomed either way. But I understand what you're saying, and I agree with it, like generally speaking, that it's like, okay, you should try your best to not be volatile. And if you're more volatile than your partner, you can end up in like some really bad situations.
Yeah, I mean that. Sure, no, yeah, obviously, never date a girl who's like ultra emotionally volatile. That's not a good thing, right? But there, there's levels and degrees of it, right? I would say also that there's a way to process and express your emotions in a non-volatile way. So, for example, if I don't know, my girlfriend says something that makes me upset, like we're having an argument or something like that, the natural knee-jerk reaction is to like let it out, be like, why did you say that? Even if you get really over the top or angry potentially or whatever, right? That's kind of like, but you don't actually have to do that. You can take that emotion, that energy that you feel, and you can ground it. You can take a 2-3 second break where you don't do anything, you ground it, right? Feel the emotional, and then you just channel it and express it in a very like calm and like present way. Hey, when you said this really didn't make me feel good because of this, and that really hurt my feelings. If I communicate it like that, it's going to be way more effective than you made me feel like shit. So there is a way to like during debates, for example, I'm pretty well known for like being stoic during debates and like never flipping out. But doesn't mean I don't feel emotions. If someone's being a dick to me, I do feel angry. It's just that I channel it in a different way than like outwardly like flipping out. Does that
make sense? No, that makes sense. I was wondering, like, why do you think in general it doesn't work the other way around? That if the woman is less volatile than the man, then the relationship is doomed to fail. Do you think there's any like underlying reason, or do you think it's just
so I think it circles back to that women generally value masculine qualities, and if you are more emotionally volatile than her, that's a feminine quality. So anytime where you force the girl to take the masculine role, she loses attraction. That could be sexually, that we see that happening sexually all the time, but it also could be emotionally and stuff like that, right? Now, of course, sometimes, it's like, look, I'm not saying like you have to make every decision. You have to always be like, we're going here, there's a reason and there's like reason and like whatever to it. But generally speaking, like if you force the girl, because someone in the relationship has to be the more masculine one, someone has to be the more feminine one. It just kind of is what it is. If you force the girl to be the more masculine one, she will lose attraction.
Yeah. Okay. I think we just have like a different understanding of a little bit of masculine femininity, or how those qualities balance out. Because in my head, at least the way that I'm thinking about it, is that it's not general overall like masculinity versus femininity. It's like striking a balance between the two. So like the woman, this is sound weird, but like if a woman and man both have like super masculine characteristics, they might bump into heads more. But if like the woman has more masculine characteristics and the man has more feminine characteristics, well, as long as they can like reach a balance of some level, then the relationship is going to work out, right? So I've seen like
that relationship is on very shaky grounds, and probably there's always exceptions, will not work out. There was a really interesting study that came out. Granted, it was like 20 years ago, but it talks about, they looked at two types of couples, and they asked like tens of thousands of couples. One where the guy had a traditionally like masculine role, like he was working, blah, blah, blah. Another one where the guy had a more feminine role, like he was a caretaker. And they found that where the guy had a more traditionally masculine role, there was a lot more sex in the relationship.
Yeah, I've read like a couple of studies kind of similar or relating to that, but then it kind of gets more complicated because it's like, okay, like a lot of these men, this does sound weird, but yeah, a lot of them like don't feel comfortable with women who like out earn them because they view it as like kind of like threat and like insecurity, right? And they view it as like, oh, like, she's gonna find someone else, or like somehow my manliness is like diminished.
Wait, sorry, I missed one part of what you said. They don't like girls who out alpha, did you say, or what did you say?
Out earn them.
Out earn them. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So I remember, it's like, I forgot the divorce rate. I think it was like over 30%. Like the chances like increased if a woman like significantly out earns her male counterpart, her male partner, basically. And it's like basically this whole idea that, and it's not, I know what you're thinking, like, oh, does a woman initiate the divorce? But at least from what I remember, and this was a while ago, so I could be wrong, but from what I remember that was like very interesting about the study was that like the men were more likely to be unhappy in the relationship or want to initiate divorce because of it. So then it becomes a question of like, okay, like how much of it, I guess, and I might just end up like, we might end up nowhere with this, but how much of it is like sociological versus biological, right? Like this whole idea that like, oh, like I can't be in this relationship anymore because society tells me that if I'm not displaying this manly characteristics, then I'm being like a failure with my partner. And if I'm out earning them, that's me not displaying manliness or me not displaying this manly characteristic. Therefore, this relationship is doomed. Self-fulfilling prophecy. You start dooming your own relationship because of like that insecurity versus like a more like biological, like innate need to out earn your partner.
Okay, yeah, there's a lot you said on that. I want to comment on. So I think honestly, whether it's more nature nurture, for at least this specific thought experiment doesn't really matter because it kind of is what it is. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if the reason women don't want a guy who's more emotionally volatile is nature, more nature or nurture based. Not really. It kind of is what it is. That's not going to affect your relationship. I do agree that with the money thing, there's definitely got to be an element of insecurity for a lot of men. And I personally don't put as much weight on the money thing. Like when I was 22, my first relationship, I was broke and I was dating an engineer at Boeing, and we never had any issues related to that. So I think sure, there's an element of self-fulfilling prophecy and insecurity. I personally place much more value on things like, again, emotional volatility, being dominant in bed, being assertive, stuff like that, than I do external things like financial. But I do think that for some women, it does play a role. Like I do think that, or earning more money is generally seen as masculine, right? And, that's like girls, it's like a little, but then again, if you're compensating for it by being really masculine in other ways, then I really don't think it's a big deal. But I think like, so if you have a situation where the girl's like working a corporate job, she makes 6 figures, and the guy's like in a band, or he's a teacher, he makes less money than her, but he's doing something he's passionate about. Like I think those relationships are fine. Like I don't really see a big inherent issue in those relationships. But if you have a situation where the guy's a stay-at-home husband, even if it logically makes sense, like even if like you and I get married and we look at our salary, like, yo, you're making twice as much money than me, it makes more sense for me to stay home with the kids. That sounds good in theory, but in practice, those almost never work out because then it takes it like 5 levels further. It's not that just the guy makes less money than her; it's the guy's literally playing the role of a woman, being the stay-at-home dad, right? So I think the money thing matters less than some of the other things that I mentioned.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the reason why a lot of women are not comfortable with like men staying at home versus them getting the bag, it goes back to how men and women are raised in society. I'm not just saying like, oh, sociologically, like being raised to believe that you should stay home instead of the man. I'm talking about the fact that like I think a lot of men are not raised with like basic life skills. So, and this is like a really big trope in college, but I think like even then this still persists to like people being older where they don't know how to do their own laundry, they don't know how to cook, they don't know how to like do basic cleaning. So what ends up happening in a lot of relationships, or at least like especially when you look at like divorce stats for women who are older, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm doing the majority of the household labor. And I'm also earning similar, if not more than you. So I am doing basically like 75% of the work in this relationship because I'm basically doing, most of the homework. And then I'm also doing most of like the financial work. And then what are you like bringing to the table? Like you're not really contributing as much labor as I am as a whole. So I think that's also another thing that like, I wonder if we lived in a society where men were in general taking care of themselves better or being taught those basic life skills, like how that would shift. Because I think right now a lot of women just think like, oh, you're okay with being a stay-at-home dad? That means I'm going to be doing all the housework. That means I'm going to have to be the one who's like cleaning while you play video games all day. And I'm not saying that's like a fair assumption or stereotype to have. I think that's just like the general like preconception that women currently have right now when it comes to like men staying at home. That it's like, oh no, like they're not really going to be like cooking and cleaning and keeping the house perfect for me. Like I'm going to be the one who's doing a bunch of that work as well.
Okay, let's do a hypothetical. Let's take 2,000 relationships, right? The first 1,000, the guy is the one that works, the woman stays home with the kids. And let's say she really does like what she's supposed to, like whatever. She's actually being a good house mom. Then the other 1,000 is the opposite. The woman is working, the guy's staying home with the kids. Again, let's assume he does his part. He's cooking, he's cleaning, he's doing everything, right? If he had to bet, which of those relationships are likely to have less divorce? Which one would you bet on?
I think if I had to bet, You're saying both of them are truly happy? Like, you're not saying that there's like, because if I had to bet from the top of my head, I'd probably say the woman. But I would probably say because like there's like this social stigma, or I guess the opposite of a stigma. I don't know. There's like this social idea that if a woman is doing that, then she's being like a good mom. She's doing her role. She's being a good person in society, basically. And currently, as the social stigma stands, if a guy's doing all of that, then he's not being manly enough. Like, he's not doing his male role. So I feel like if I had to bet from just that information, I would say, oh no, the woman is more likely to like, or that relationship is more likely to succeed because there's less of an outside influence stigmatizing that and making the partners feel bad versus like if it was like, you know, a guy doing the stay-at-home work, cleaning or whatever, like you're still gonna have a bunch of societal factors telling him he's not manly enough, he's not being a good enough provider, like he should like, you know, decide to work instead, like what is he doing, things like that.
Okay, so we agree on the is. We just disagree on the why. Okay, let's kind of table the why, but we do agree on the is. Okay, so that's good. So let me try to think of another way to kind of take this conversation forward. So, okay, well, let me just share with you an observation I have. So I've seen a lot of relationships when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, as an adult, as a dating coach or whatever. And this is typically what happens when the guy is the stay-at-home dad. What happens is the woman is very appreciative of it. It's like, hey, wow, you're such a gentleman. You're giving up your career for me. And it almost always happens because the woman is making more money than the man. They're having a kid. And it's like, hey, someone's got to stay with the kids. You know, I make less money than you. It logically makes sense, right? No one can dispute that. And it stays like that for a few months, maybe even a year, maybe 2 years. But what ultimately happens is the wife winds up cheating with someone she works with or typically with someone she works with, and that relationship's on crumbles. Right. And it just seems like there's a lot more cheating that happens in those situations compared to the opposite. So that kind of begs the question, why is that? And to me, I think, again, it goes back to the fact that, okay, do you agree that in order to have attraction, you need respect? A woman cannot be attracted to a man she doesn't respect.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think respect is in a lot of ways subconscious because I think logically, as a woman who has a stay-at-home whatever husband is logically wants to respect him. It's like there's nothing logically about that makes you disrespect him. But I think a lot of respect things are subconscious. And I think that what happens is that she subconsciously loses some element of respect for him, and that causes her to lose attraction. When she loses attraction, she's more likely to seek that attraction elsewhere, i.e. cheating.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can like completely agree with you with that, or I would have to like look more like statistical data to make a general statement. If we're talking about our own experiences, like I don't know. I think a lot of women, I feel like personally me and a lot of my like women friends would not lose attraction to a guy if he's like stay at home, as long as he's actually doing the work, which is like pretty rare in my opinion. If anything, like I had a boyfriend who used to cook for me like pretty regularly, and like that made me like respect him like so much more. That made me like, wow, like and I know that's like kind of a basic life skill, but it's because all the other guys I met, like they didn't know how to really cook for themselves very well, or they could not like create like very good meals and stuff like that.
But to be fair, he wasn't a stay-at-home husband. He was just a boyfriend that liked to cook.
Yeah, but like I'm saying, like
there's no issue with that. Yeah, cooking is good. Yeah.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that like I could theoretically seeing myself like if I had, and obviously it's theory, we can't know for reality till it happens. But if I had like a stay-at-home husband and he was like taking like great care of the kids, he was like cooking, he was cleaning, and these are things that I am not very good at, I'll be honest. Like that would just make my ovaries explode. I don't know how else to say it. I would be like, wow, like I have such a great husband. He's like doing everything that he has to do. Like he's like taking such good care of the kids. So obviously like this is like all anecdotal, like from both of our parts. It would be interesting to see like the rates of cheating when it comes to a stay-at-home husband versus not, because like I don't really have the statistical data for that. The only data that I do know is that partners in general are not very likely to cheat. Or like I think it's like, what is it? 60% of couples like in the United States like don't cheat. So I think like even in the cases of cheating, that's still like a minority or like subsection of the population. Like most people don't cheat with their partner, they just leave them.
Well, I think also like a lot of cheating happens that goes unreported, right? Because it's not really advantageous when you're getting a divorce to say that, you know, you were cheating on your partner.
Yeah,
so, so I think that you might logically want to, you know, respect and value a guy who stays home, right? I don't think you're lying about that. But what you logically want and what you subconsciously want can be different things. Like, generally speaking, what do women always say when they logically ask, what kind of guys are you into? Oh, I just like a guy who's nice, right? I like a nice guy, right? That's what you hear all the time. And women generally like someone who's kind, but it seems that guys who are assholes get laid a lot more, than guys who are nice guys, right? So there's typically a big discrepancy between what women logically think they want and what actually they're attracted to and what they actually respect.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with that one either. I think what happens a lot with the whole like nice guy scenario is that there's a bunch of like self-affirming bias in there. I'm not just talking about you. I'm talking about like in general, like a lot of guys who claim that they're nice or nice guys, like it's even a stereotype online that they're like actually not nice at all, right? Or they think that they're like basically dude sex over basic human kindness, and they think like, oh no, like these assholes get the girl. But in reality, like no, those assholes are like treating the girl like as like a normal human being, versus you're like treating them as like this weird like mythical like pedestal-y creature that's like very strange, that gives like that makes women be like, you're not treating me like a person, you're treating me like this weird, not even you're treating me as like kind of an exotic creature, and like that's kind of like very like offsetting for a lot of women. So I'm not sure about like the whole like nice guys versus asshole thing, because I think from at least what I've seen and what I've read, it seems like a lot of people who claim that they're nice are not nice.
Yeah. So you were mentioning earlier about studies. So I was just doing a little bit of research. Using retrospective data from the Netherlands, the results show that divorce is more likely when the husband works on average fewer hours and the wife more hours. So that's like one piece of data. Let me see what other studies there are.
Yeah, but can you send me that, because I'm curious about if that kind of goes back to the whole idea that
Yeah, sure. I can also just share my screen. Hang on a second.
Yeah, because when I was like reading earlier, it's about like men are more likely to initiate divorce if their partner is out earning them. So then that doesn't go towards necessarily like what women are interested in. That goes more into like what men feel.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, yeah. Generally speaking, 80% of divorce are initiated by women.
But this is a subsection of a subsection, right? We're talking about like, oh, when a man out earns a woman, or sorry, when a woman out earns a man who initiates divorce, which is like basically like a subsection of people initiating divorces.
Let's actually take a look at that. When a woman out. So what is your claim when it comes to that?
From what I read a while ago, it's that men are more likely than women to divorce them or to initiate divorce. Sorry, I'm typing it too. Initiate divorce if a woman out earns them.
Divorce rates by women out earning. Okay, here we go. Divorce rates affected by women on behalf of blah blah blah. Changes in the air, whatever. There's the fact other factors still play. Where's the actual fucking ratchet between women generally? But the one as you just got a partner, though, I'm not going to use your warning that when women out and how's the rest of that match? Yeah, but that's not actually telling me who's divorcing.
Yeah.
When wives make more than husbands should take note. 15%. Okay. Why women?
Or maybe it would be easier to see when do men initiate divorce.
Because I would venture intuitively, it seems like it would be the opposite. So I want to.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why that stuck with me.
Can you try to pull that up?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Okay, I need to search about this a different way. Divorce statistics based on women out earning men. Okay, let's try it this way. Okay. Source of the number of couples face these issues over 30 living. Okay, maybe this is it. Revealing divorce statistics in 2023. Key divorce in total. Before finds how many marriages end divorce. How do couples? How long does it take care? What happens after divorce? Okay, for divorce, the divorce rate effective, blah blah. Have the highest 40% of the expect to remarry each other. Divorce more likely to die. Majority divorces from their own. Okay, most common lack of a commitment. 45%. Domestic abuse. Okay, none of this is telling me what I want to know.
Yeah, the only thing I'm finding right now, which I apologize for, and if I find it later, I will send it to you because I'm not crazy, is that, when women out earn their male partners or whatever, they're still more likely to do the domestic housework or household chores, which, like we mentioned that earlier.
Before. I've actually seen that one before.
Yeah.
fewer divorces over people to sound like we're not too long. According to the Wall Street Journal, there's a change because society's shifting. Men are no longer expected to be sold. It's not uncommon. The cost for the wife, I think. Okay, the cost of having baby daycare. Nope, that's still something different. All right, Chad, can you guys take a look at this? Is it true that women are more likely to women are less likely to divorce than a man when she's earning more money than him?
No. They're more like, okay, wait. Let me clarify. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. As things currently stand, if a woman is out earning a man, she is more likely to divorce him if she's doing, or the most common cited reason, or not most, one of the most common cited reasons is a household labor. She's still doing the majority. From what I remember reading, I remember studying a study saying that if women are out earning the man is much more likely to be unhappy in the relationship, basically. And from what I remember, which I might be wrong, is that they were more likely to initiate divorce in those circumstances. But I'm going to broaden my search right now to if men are more likely to be unhappy in a relationship where the woman out earns them, because I'm having trouble finding the exact stat.
I do see something. It suggests that a study from Chicago reveals that when a wife makes more than her spouse, divorce rates rise 50%. So overall divorces are more common when a woman is making more money, but that doesn't tell us who's initiating the divorce. So let me see if I can find that money problem.
Well, I'm sure in those situations, what is it? Okay. And there's a big qualifying factor here, right? And it has to do with household labor. Because what we were originally referring to before was that, if a man is doing the same amount of household or more, the man is now doing the majority of household labor, what are the chances of divorce, right? And the big qualifying factor in like these studies is, the man is not doing as much household labor. The woman's doing the household labor. So we're trying to find a very specific stat that is talking about men actually doing the majority of household labor and the woman out earning them. And how does that lead to like relationship divorce or, general like unhappiness in a relationship?
Yeah, here's another one. It also apparently affects fidelity. So when a woman is out earning the men, it increases divorce. But yeah, we don't know who is initiating it. Again, I feel pretty confident saying that I really think it's more likely to be the woman, but I can't find a study on that. I don't want to spend too long. But anyone in the chat, if you guys can find a study on that, if it proves me right or Pxie right, link that please, or at least tell me where I can find it. Okay, so let's get back to the conversation. Where do we live? Let's see. Okay, so we'll agree to this. Okay, you said you disagree with. Actually, let's dial it back even more. You mentioned you disagree with evolutionary psychology. Why is that?
I guess, okay, the best way I can explain this is that a lot of people use evolutionary psychology in the wrong way, or they use it in a way where they're trying to make these conclusions that kind of don't really follow with the rest of the framework. So I guess it really depends on like what Evo Psych term or like phrase the person is using or what statement they're trying to make. I'd rather just look at things like through regular psychology or at least behavior analysis. So that's what I studied basically, where it's like, okay, people work on this idea of like reinforcers and punishers, not necessarily like on this long like background like lineage or trying to like spread their gene no matter what. And the reason why I bring that up is because like what we talked about before in the Fresh and Fit, like how you agree that there's guys, or how the Fresh and Fit guys really generally don't care about a woman's intelligence, right? Well, if they're going to claim Evo Psych, if they're going to claim like, oh no, everything a woman and man does has to do with like evolutionary psychology, then they should care, following their own logic, right, about a woman's intelligence, because that's going to impact their lineage, their genetics, everything in the future, right? So it's like, okay, well, here's a clear example of Evo Psych not panning out the way it should be, right? Using that own logic. So it's like, if you're already finding a hole in that, like how many other holes can we find when we start analyzing Evo Psych?
Yeah, so the general, like, basically the concept of Evo Psych is basically suggesting that our psychology or behavior is affected by our evolution. So basically, 10,000 years ago, we had to evolve this way, and that affects how we function. You don't disagree with that basic premise, do you?
That, what is it? That like biology affects how we.
Yeah, that like our evolution, the way we evolved, affects our, our psychology to some extent.
Oh yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I just disagree with the idea that everything is Evo Psych, or I disagree with what some people claim to be Evo Psych.
Okay, so you don't disagree with Evo Psych, you just disagree with elements of it, basically.
Yes.
Okay, that's fair enough. I probably disagree with elements of it too. So we can move off this point. Okay, let me bring it back to this question. Do you have any other issues with the pickup community specifically?
Not so far, or not that I know of any recent time. I remember being on the internet quite a while ago when I was younger and seeing like some pickup artist stuff online and being like, well, this is just dishonesty. Like, this is not okay. But from what I've seen, or at least from what I've talked with other people like Troy Francis, like everything they've said, like I don't have any immediate issues with it. I'm like, okay, no, that's actually fine. That makes sense. Like, you're just trying to put your best foot forward, not trying to be deceitful about wanting a relationship or not. Not trying to flex your Lamborghini, Bugatti, whatever it is, because you think it'll land you a chick. Like, I agree, those are good things.
All right, we converted one to the pickup world. Good. Okay, let me ask the question like this then. So I'm sure you've heard the statistics on incels. Over 25% of men are literally having zero sex, and a lot of other men are not having zero sex, but they're not able to either have as much sex as they want or get into a relationship or whatever. They're struggling to a lesser extent. What is your dating advice for those people? Either the guys who are like literally the 25% who's literally unable to get any girl, or the guys who are just struggling in general?
Oh, this might get me flamed. It's so sad, but I think one of the best ways to start getting sex or like finding people or whatever that want to sleep with you is in a way to like stop caring about it so much. Because I think what happens is a lot of guys, they realize that they're not getting sex. And then they kind of like make that like their whole like life mission, life purpose. Like, oh, the only thing is like, I need to get laid. Like, that's how I prove my worth. It's like, I want to be happy. I need to have sex. Like, that's going to make me happy. And then like two things. Surprise, once you finally have sex, it doesn't make you happy because, you know, there's like a lot more to life than just sex. And then second of all, they become like so desperate that they stop interacting with women like humans, right? They start treating them as like a rare exotic creature. So I think if you start focusing on just working on yourself genuinely, just, okay, what do you like to do? What makes you happy? Like, what hobbies can you explore that add like character and depth towards you? You're eventually going to attract women. And not like, I don't be like eventually in the far off future, but like, I mean, yeah, women will be attracted to that because it's like, oh no, you're your own complete human being. Like, we both have something that we genuinely share in common, and that can be a basis of mutual attraction. And now I don't have to worry that you're going to become like a psychotic stalker if I sleep with you, right? Like, I know that you have your own shit going on and you're not going to like go crazy. So I think like those things, I think if you want to sleep with someone or you want to eventually have like sex, you have to focus on not making sex your main priority, because then you're just going to alienate people.
Yeah, don't give a shit. I agree with you. If you don't give a shit, that makes you more attractive to the opposite sex. But here's the question: how do you stop giving a shit? Like, let's pretend I'm an incel.
Hey, Pxie, I'm 33 years old and I've never had sex and I really want to. That's all I think about.
How do I stop giving a shit? So how would you help that person stop giving a shit?
Oh, I don't even know if this is good advice, but I kind of, whenever I hear stuff like that, and I think even feminists get mad at me when I kind of want to say this advice, I'm kind of like low key, like, I'm sorry. I'm mentally getting ready.
You're good. Do your thing.
I feel like you have to take away the allure of sex a little bit. So I'm not saying you should hire a prostitute, or an escort. Like, I'm not necessarily saying do that, but part of me wants to give that advice, because it's like, once you have sex and you realize like that's not the end all be all of life, like it's gonna hurt you in a way, because I have idealized this thing forever, right? So it's like in your mind, it's like amazing, like life-changing thing. And don't worry, like, you know, there can be like really good sex out there, but like it's not going to cure your depression. It's not going to be the answer to your happiness. It never will be. And never will finding a partner either. Like, they can add to your happiness and they can make your life, like, you know, generally speaking, like enjoyable and stuff. But if you're already having issues without it, having it isn't going to suddenly fix it, because it's not a cure. I think other than that, I think it's focus. Like, forget, like, easier said than done to say just forget about sex. But like, find a hobby, find passions that you can just get into that can like that genuinely add enjoyment and fulfillment to your life, and try to just like basically log off, get off Twitter. It gives you mental illness. And find real world things that can like help you ground yourself in reality versus like idealizing and you keep like fantasizing and dreaming about these like more far off things.
Okay, it's interesting because what you said about like the prostitute thing is actually something I've heard a lot of black pillars say, not even red pillars, black pillars. I don't know if I agree with it. I guess it doesn't hurt to try. What I've seen happen with like an anecdotal level is with these guys who are having a hard time getting laid, they get a prostitute and then they just keep getting more prostitutes and then they're just like not even trying to like meet girls the regular way and they're just sleeping with prostitutes. I've never once seen a situation where repeatedly sleeping with prostitutes made a guy happy. I feel like it takes a massive toll on your self-esteem. So that's kind of what I've seen. So I would be very hesitant to give that advice, but I guess if you do it once, it doesn't hurt, but I feel like it doesn't scratch the same itch because there's something like that happens with a man's brain or self-esteem when he's like completely not successful with women. I know with like myself, like I lost my virginity when I was 19. I wasn't able to like actually get laid like, somewhat regular until I was like 22 or so. So I know that like with me, when I was 18, 19, like I had a good childhood. I had good friends. I went to a great college. Like just everything about my life was good, like on the surface. But I was just like insanely depressed because I just could not for the life of me succeed with girls. And it made me feel like shit. I felt like such a failure. I felt like a loser. And that's not a unique experience. That's something that I've heard. I did a video where I explained that. And so many people were like, dude, holy shit, you literally summed me up in a nutshell. And then something switched in my brain when I was able to start being more successful with women. Didn't happen overnight, but I no longer feel any of those feelings I used to have. I no longer think I'm a failure. I no longer think I'm not attractive. I no longer think that like none of that stuff even enters my head. So there is something to be said. It's not going to fix all your problems, but there's definitely something to be said about going from a guy who's not successful with women to being a guy who's successful with women.
Yeah. I think two things. I think sleeping with an escort, I don't think it's going to make you happy. Like that, but that's, I guess, and maybe that's why this is kind of black pill advice, but that's kind of the point where I think some men, because it's this idea, I think a lot of men like fantasize or idealize sex. And that's why like they have such a hard time like letting go of the idea of getting laid, because to them that's the ultimate marker of success because it's going to fix everything for them. And then it doesn't, and then it's like, oh shit, guess what, it didn't fix like all the problems in your life. There's something else going on, you got to fix that instead. So yeah, that advice is not meant to make somebody happy. It's more like meant to make somebody realize that sex isn't the end all be all. But I do wonder, like, I wonder if it's like just a thing about how old someone is, like what you said, like a switch just suddenly flipped, or was there something that specifically happened to you that helped you change your mindset, that's to make yourself stop valuing yourself on the basis of attracting women? Or did you just suddenly...
I started getting laid more, started being more successful with women. I was able to improve my social skills, improve my charisma, improve my like everything basically that's involved with seducing women. That's basically what it was. Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways to change your inner thought process. One that I've heard that I've personally never done is through what's called like inner work, like meditation or whatever. I've tried it. I've never really had any success with it. The way that I've always done it for myself and advocate is through positive external reference experiences. So if you think you're a loser, like let's take a guy who thinks he's a loser, women don't like him. Well, let's say for the next 30 days, he has hot girls approaching him, sleeping with him, blah, blah, blah. That thought process is going to change because he now has enough positive external experiences. So the advice that worked really well for me is actually getting those positive external experiences to proving to my subconscious that my negative thoughts are no longer applicable to me.
Yeah, I think it definitely varies on like the extremity of the inceldom, because there is a certain level of like extreme inceldom where you kind of, this doesn't sound extreme, but like you just give off those bad negative vibes, which makes, yeah. So then at that point, it's like you can't really get that positive external references or experiences because you are quite literally.
Yeah, it's a chicken and the egg type of thing.
Yeah. So how do you think, how would you try to break out those people from that extreme end of the spectrum where it's like, oh, like they're their own worst enemy, basically?
Well, I think if someone doesn't actually want to improve and their identity is that of an incel, there's really not much you can do for them unless they personally make a conscious decision to change. So for someone like what the hell's his name? I am Skippy or whatever. Yeah, like I don't know if I could help that guy. But I have worked with a good amount of virgins, guys who are like 30. But the big difference is they wanted to not be virgins. They want to get better with women. This is kind of how I would coach them. The first thing I would do is I would set up some easy W's for them and slowly increase the challenge level. So if I get like a 35-year-old virgin, I'm not going to have him go to the club trying to pick up chicks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very sexual Tinder profile for him and I'm going to give him, some things he can say where the girl's going to come straight to his place. Now, all he has to do is not have some kind of a seizure and he's going to get laid, right? That's really low challenge level. But again, the last thing I want is for this guy to take more L's. I want to start taking W's, right? At that point, he's going to gain a little bit more confidence. He's like, oh, wow, okay, well, maybe I can do this. Then we start upping the challenge level. Then maybe we have him meet a girl in public. Maybe we have him do a little bit of cold approach. We just keep upping the challenge level, right, progressively. But I think you have to start with a very, very low challenge level because the last thing you want is that guy failing more and more and more because they're already discouraged. So, yeah, that's kind of how I would go about it. And I've had pretty good luck with a good amount of virgin dudes who were like, again, they were like spinning their wheels because they were trying to play a video game where the level was too high for them. They needed to basically lower the challenge level, and then they can slowly get higher.
Yeah, no, I do actually think that's good advice in the sense of, I don't know how I feel about viewing this as like a game per se, but I guess if you're just like if that is a mindset you're going into, then I do think that's good advice because it's like the whole idea of like, oh yeah, like focus on like kind of the positives, focus on the wins, like help you, like, I don't know. I think this kind of goes for a lot of different aspects in life, like even doing a sport or even talking to other people. People have social anxiety. They focus so much on, oh, why did I say this instead of saying that? Like, I'm so stupid. I'm such an idiot. Like, what the fuck? And it's like, okay, like if you start constantly having that mindset when you talk to other people, then you're focused on the wrong things. You're self-sabotaging. So I do like that piece of advice. I think it is a good piece of advice. Like take the W's or like focus on your W's instead of like focusing on like these like larger, more abstractical like L's.
Yeah, there's a really interesting book called The Winner Effect by Ian Robertson, and it talks about how winning and losing actually changes your brain chemistry and psychology. So it breaks down how if you have a series of wins, you're just in a completely different mental space than someone has a series of L's, right? And that like actually will change your brain chemistry, right? Which is why, for example, for fighters, or like they have them fight, like the common thing with fighters is like boxers, we're going to have them box someone easy before the big match, right? So you can get in a winning state, right? Again, it's all about changing your brain chemistry to like, I'm a winner, right? And when you believe you're a winner, you're just going to be way more confident, way more charismatic, way more determined. So I think that book really nicely explains why it is important not to get into too bad of a loser streak where we're just taking L after L. You do have to break out of that and get into a winning cycle, which is essential. So that's kind of what it's based around. You said also work on yourself. And I think that one can be yes and no. I think it depends on what that is. Like work on your passion. So if your passion is like Dungeons and Dragons, that really won't help you in any substantial way. If your passion is like arguing with people on Reddit, that won't really help you in any substantial way. But if your passion is like photography or maybe even snowboarding or something like that, then that could help you. So the way I've always like answered this question, you can tell me if you agree or disagree with this, is that for those people who are not successful with women, what you want to do is become a man who is actually more sexually attractive to women. And that is a pretty broad answer. But what that means specifically is work on inner and outer things that are going to make you more attractive. So outer stuff would be like getting in better shape, getting a better haircut, getting better fashion, right? That would be outer stuff. Inner stuff would be becoming more confident, becoming more charismatic, being able to escalate better, being able to build sexual chemistry better, being quicker, being able to understand a girl's body language better, all those things. And they're both very important. I would say the inner thing is what kind of gets ignored in the red pill community. They talk about the outer. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is you have to put yourself out there more. So the more girls you talk to, the more likely you are to get a W. So, if you increase your inner attractiveness, you increase your outer attractiveness, and you increase your volume, you're going to increase your results with women, right? So that's kind of the way I've always explained that. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think I generally agree. Maybe I agree with you with the arguing on Reddit. I'm not sure about the Dungeons and Dragons one. But I maybe that can go back to like how how likely is your hobby willing to put you in contact with other women? So I feel like back in like the 80s, for example, if you played Dungeons and Dragons, like good luck finding like a woman who also plays that, because it was like very like gate kept from women. But I feel like now like so many like nerdy stuff are now mainstream, and so many more women participate in that stuff, that you are, if you are passionate about those things, as long as you're also being social about them and making a conscious effort to also involve like women and men like together, whatever, you will have a good chance of finding somebody else who also shares that passion. I think the problem that happens is a lot of guys who are like into like, let's say Dungeons and Dragons or like Star Trek or Star Wars, is that it goes back to the exotic animal problem, where it's like you have a woman who has a similar passion as you, foster that, talk about it in like a friendly way, talk about like, oh, what do you like about it, pick their mind, like they want to feel like you're actually interested in them as well, plus the passion, like use that as an avenue to get to know that person more, versus then an avenue of like trying to quiz that person and prove your knowledge superiority of that subject. I feel like that's when it's like more likely to harm you. I think photography, what you said before, is like a good example as well, because even if the other person isn't passionate, you can still ask that person about like their thoughts of your photographs, for example, or like what type of, photographs they like best, what type of composition, like what do they enjoy? And then that makes you're basically using your hobby as like an intermediary to foster deeper conversation. And you can't really do that with something like arguing on Reddit, because it's like, just an online forum where people are going back and forth. Like you're not going to make the person sit down and read a million Reddit comments about a million different things. Like that's not as simple as just like showing them a photograph and being like, what do you think?
Yeah, well, becoming better at Dungeons and Dragons is not going to improve your sexual attractiveness in any substantial way. Like maybe to the 5 or 6 girls who play it, but not to the average girl. The average girl doesn't give a fuck about how good you are at Dungeons and Dragons. But things that will actually improve your attractiveness will be, again, like getting in better shape, right? Getting better fashion, getting better social skills, getting better jokes, reading body language better, right? So, so that's what I would say is focus on the things that actually improve your attractiveness when it comes to women. One interesting thing I've noticed when talking to like a lot of feminists and stuff like that is when I asked this question, your answer was a lot better than what I usually hear, but they say like, just be yourself. That's like the common advice, like, oh, just be yourself. And just be yourself is really good advice for someone like me, who's already like pretty good with girls, but it would have been really bad advice for me when I was 18. And so the issue is that if you've been being yourself for 30 years and it hasn't worked, why would it work in the next year or so? So what you have to do is slowly transform yourself into a guy who's actually attracted to women, right? And again, external, internal, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, that's like, I've taken a personal issue with the just be yourself advice, because it doesn't ever help anyone.
I think that question, like just the answer is so vague in a way, like, oh, just be yourself. I feel like people are constantly changing and becoming different versions of themselves, right? So it kind of like poses this idea that like people are just static. And I really don't like that, because I'm like, okay, like, be yourself. What does that mean? What if yourself is a horrible person, right? What if yourself is somebody who likes like watching kids get kicked on the playground? Like, no, like get better, become a more decent human being, and then think about being in a relationship. Like, fuck, I don't know. I agree. I don't like that type of advice.
Yeah, like I mean, if you're a piece of shit who likes watching kids get kicked, you're probably not even gonna want to change that, because you probably like get satisfaction from that. But a more common thing would be like, what if you're a guy who's very, very unsocial? You just don't like socialize, right? That's fairly common. Like you do have to change that. You have to become more social. What if you're a guy who, for example, is very very submissive? You just never speak up. You never state your opinion. You're very meek. I think meek is the word I'm looking for, right? That's also going to work to your disadvantage. So yeah, I mean, like all those things need to be improved on if you're not happy with the results with women. You're never going to take a guy who's like an incel, who's like confident, charismatic, right? Like that never happens. It's always guys who are like very meek and like kind of like.
I have a question. You said earlier before that like women want men with like masculine characteristics. So I assume like through your worldview, like men also want women who have feminine characteristics. So is it like a personal turnoff for you if a woman is more like, wanting to take like, a more leadership role, or is more like, I guess, masculine in those areas, right? Like, or no?
I have a tendency to date a lot of feisty women, but then again, I also date a lot of Latinas, so there might be a correlation there. Um, it depends on how. Like I actually like women who are opinionated. Like I don't like the like the Japanese housewife who like just like kind of just like larps around, doesn't say anything. Like I like a woman who has like her own opinions, she's passionate and shit like that. But I don't really consider that being masculine. Uh, Masculine would be more of like I don't know, if the girl's like, well, I guess sexually that's one whole thing, but let's take sexually aside. I'm trying to think of what would be like a non-sexual way where a girl would be like more masculine in the relationship. Um, hmm. I think it could be something like she she always tries to like, well, actually, because I don't even know, like she tries being like she's never like supportive. She tries always being like the more like, like generally what I like is women who are supportive and empathetic, right? She doesn't take that supportive empathetic role. She tries to like kind of like be the dude in a way and be like, you be the empathetic one for me, right? And you should be empathetic to your girlfriend, but I may not be explaining that the best way, but I think you guys probably understand what I'm getting at. Is like, yeah, like what's feminine things? Well, being empathetic, being supportive, and like if a girl doesn't want to do that, she wants to do the opposite. Yeah, that would be a turn off, right? I mean, on a more surface level, it's like a deep voice. Girls like tall or whatever has masculine qualities. I think that goes without saying that guys are less attracted to that. But even I think internal stuff like women generally like men generally like women who are sweet, who are sexually submissive, who are empathetic, who are supportive. So does that kind of answer the question?
Yes and no. It answers the question, but I'm just thinking, like, as a woman, I don't know if I would list those as like feminine qualities, because I feel like a lot of women want men who are also like supportive and empathetic. I feel like that's like something a lot of women complain about all the time. That's like, this guy, doesn't really seem like he gives a shit about me, and it's because you're not being supportive or empathetic enough.
Well, I would say like if I look at my relationship or any one of my relationships, it's like every single one of my girlfriends is like, if you have to pick someone who's the cheerleader, it would be the girl, not me. Doesn't mean I'm not supportive with her. Like I have always been supportive with my girlfriend and my ex-girlfriends, but generally speaking, like she would be the cheerleader, not me. And I think that's like a good dynamic to have. And I think a lot of guys, they want to have a cheerleader. They don't want to be the cheerleader, generally speaking.
I don't know. I can see that how that dynamic works. So I don't know. I feel like, but this goes back to what we were saying before, right? Where I just feel like a lot more times, like it's like 50-50. Like everybody just takes their turn being supportive and the cheerleader. And to me, it's very hard to quantify in my mind whether it's like 70-30 or 60-40 or whatever.
Well, it depends on the relationship, but yeah, I think 50-50 is probably not the norm. I'm sure it happens. I mean, I'm sure sometimes you get situations where the opposite, but I would say that like a more stable relationship would be where it's like more skewed in the guy's favor when it comes to masculine versus feminine traits. But yeah, there's degrees of it. And I mean, there's exceptions for every rule. My aunt, for example, works. My uncle stays at home. He actually doesn't even really do shit. He just fucking wakes up, walks the dog, watches TV, barbecues some shit. That's it, right? He's not even like, she's taking care of the house. And they've been going strong for like 30 years, man. They're together. I don't ever believe she cheated on him, so there's exceptions for every rule. But generally speaking, yeah, like that's kind of things work best when the guy's the more masculine one, the one is the more feminine one.
Do you think it's do you agree with Russian Fit or whatever when they say it's like in a man's nature to want to cheat, or no?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I think, well, yes and no. I think men and women like variety and novelty. I think men tend to value novelty more than women, right? So men are more likely to want that novelty, even if all their sexual needs are being met compared to a woman. I think a lot of women, if all her needs are being met, her sexual needs, her emotional needs, if she has good character and she's like, doesn't have any like massive like trauma, she's probably going to be not seeking that novelty. Versus there's a lot of situations where a man has all his needs met and he's still seeking that novelty. So I do think men are more driven by novelty, but it doesn't mean it's in their nature to cheat. Cheating implies you're acting on your desire, right? So you could be tempted to cheat, right? You could be tempted to want to fuck a girl, but you don't do it, and then you didn't cheat. So no, I think that a lot of that comes down to your self-control and, you know, your ethics and whatnot. And I'm sure, like, you know, a lot of guys feel the urge to cheat, but they don't act on that urge, right? So no, I don't think it's in every man's nature to have to cheat. Like, you have control what you do or you don't do it. But I do think that a lot of men do enjoy the novelty, me being one of them as well.
Fair answer.
Yeah, my answers are a little bit more nuanced than fresh and fit. Let me ask you this question. Do you think most women prefer sexually dominant guy?
Honestly, I think most women, and I'm thinking about how to answer this because I'm like an outlier in this, but I think most women prefer, honestly, vanilla men. I think most people out there are vanilla. Like, I guess most women, I think what they want is a guy who is willing to initiate, which I can be interpreted as like sexual dominance. So in that answer, yes. But I feel like in terms of like dominance, like, oh, like BDSM dominance or stuff like that, I think like most women like what.
Oh, I don't mean it. I don't mean it like BDSM. I mean like I don't know, like you're having sex. Let me paint you a little picture. You're having sex with a girl, right? And you're the one that like kind of like brings her in, and you're like, I'm gonna fuck the shit out of you, right? Compare that to the girl having to do that, right? You're gonna fuck the shit out of me, right? Like, most women would prefer the former. They would prefer when the guy's more dominant sexually, right? I think that's what I've been told by like a lot of girls, is that like one thing that they like is that I'm like very sexually dominant, which is interesting because in my day-to-day life I'm actually super chill and relaxed. But I do think that, yeah, from my experience, I mean, you said you're the exception. What did you mean by that?
I don't know if I want to go super in depth into that, but I think yeah, I think women in general don't like to take initiative when it comes to this stuff for a lot of reasons why, right? I think most of it, again, because I'm a feminist, whatever, I think a lot of it is sociological, just this idea of like, oh, like, you know, oh, okay. I think men are conditioned a lot more than women, at least things how they currently stand, to believe that they need like a relationship to be happy, or to have sex to be happy, right? And I think a lot of women like were conditioned to believe that, and now they're like, oh no, like I'm completely happy just being like with my friends, having like a girls' night out, whatever. So I think women are a lot less likely to initiate, and it's like, okay, well, why should I have to go initiate? Like, a guy should just, if he wants something with me, like he can try something, but I'm not really gonna seek it out myself, because like I can just have, you know, these like very fulfilling relationships with like my friends or family or people around me. Like, I don't really feel like the super strong need for that. So I think I forgot where I was going with this.
I really don't think you're the exception. What I've noticed with feminists, as just an observation, is that like in their day-to-day life, yeah, they're like feisty as fuck and they're like all about their shit, but sexually they're into the most dominant, even potentially degrading sex. Like, I've noticed that with like the feminists I've hooked up with, is like outside the bedroom, is they're like debating me and bickering with me and arguing with me, but when it comes to like sex, they're like, slap me and call me a dirty slut. Like, they're like take it further than the average girl, I feel like, when it comes to that. Like, and it's just a very interesting paradox that I think also a lot of other guys have noticed, is that like in the bedroom, super fucking submissive. Outside the bedroom, they're like, you know, not.
I think there's that trend, and I think there's also like a trend of like what is it? Submissive women also being like more dominant in bed, or like dominant men being submissive in bed. And I think my theory on this is just my theory. My theory on this is that people like in the bedroom the opposite of what they are like in day-to-day life. And the reason for that is like a lot of, I think people in general like look at the bedroom as like a sanctuary kind of, or like as a reprieve. So like part of, I think, what like makes like sexual things like so like intimate for a lot of people is this idea that like you're showing your partner something that you wouldn't show them otherwise, which is like why you hear these stories of like super rich men or dominant men like going to a dominatrix, right? Like regularly or stuff like that, right? And I think all of these are kind of like I would say generally in the fringe edge, I can't pronounce words, when it comes to like sub-dom BDSM stuff. Because I think the vast majority of people are like somewhat vanilla or in the middle. But that's my theory when it comes to things about like being like super dominant in real life, but then being submissive in the bedroom, or being like kind of submissive and outside, but then dominant in the bedroom. I think people who like have a personality that is like very strongly one way tend to want to do the opposite thing in bed.
I don't know about that. I'm sure it happens. Like I think 99+% of women prefer to be sexually submissive. I don't know if it's 99% of guys. I don't think it is. I think it's with guys. I mean, being sexually dominant, being the opposite. If I had to take a guess, I would say that maybe 85-90% of guys prefer to be sexually dominant, maybe even less, because a lot of them are going to lie about that. So there seems to be kind of a little bit of a mismatch when it comes to that. Like I do legitimately believe, because I've talked to them, that there's a decent amount of men who prefer to be sexually submissive, right? They want the girl to whatever, right? And typically those guys will probably be skewed more in the LGBTQ side of things, but not always. Some of them are 100% straight. But I have yet to meet a woman who likes to be sexually dominant. I've met women who say they like to be sexually dominant, because in my Tinder profile, I have like dominant. And so I've had situations where I've matched with girls and they're like, we're not going to get along because I like to be the dominant one in bed. And like, this will never work out. I'm like, all right, let's meet up for a drink. Let's see what happens. And it's every single time. I know it sounds like I'm kind of bragging, so I'm trying to say this way, but every single time it's always been like, holy shit, I never realized I like to be submissive. Right. So it just seems, I'm like, I like that so much more. This is so much better. Holy shit. Where can I find more guys like you? So, yeah, I just have yet to meet a girl who truly, deep down inside, likes to be sexually submissive. But I met a good amount of guys who don't like to be dominant.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm more mixed about that. I think, there's something I was going to say earlier.
Do you have any friends that you can think of that actually prefer to be sexually dominant female friends?
I don't know their lives like super in detail, but if I had to guess, like there's been like a couple of hints where it's like, okay, like she definitely is the one who like take the reins in the bedroom.
Well, she takes the reins, sure, that happens, but does she actually prefer it to be that way? Or does she prefer for the guy to be the one to take the reins?
No, I think they prefer it that way. Like I think at least from the little glimpses I've seen, but I've seen plenty of like submissive women too. Which I think in general, when especially I'm kind of moving this outside the bedroom, just being hit on in general, or like in a really like, I think, yeah, women in general don't want to be the one who has to initiate everything, right? Like I think women in general want the man to initiate with them, but they don't want to be the ones who like hit on a guy or go whatever. But I think once like you're in an established relationship, I think it's like very like individualized, or it depends on the person. Because I'm just thinking about like certain friends of mine that I'm just like I know that they like, well, I don't know super in depth, but I can garner some knowledge where it's like, okay, yeah, like I think
initiating isn't really like the key crux of like who's dominant, who's submissive, right? Like there's been a lot of times when my girlfriend was the one that initiated sex. It more has to do with like who's the one who's spanking the other one, who's the one that's choking the other one, who's the one that's pulling the other person's hair, who's the one that's picking that person up, who's the one that's like, like, okay, now bend over, I'm gonna fuck you like this, or go like this, right? Who's the one that's like, kind of like being bossy when it comes to the sex, right? It doesn't mean you have to be like a selfish lover. It doesn't mean your girl can't be like, oh, I really like this position, blah, blah. But that's kind of what I'm referring to more. Like, like if you watch like a porno, like you don't really see many pornos where like the girl's a dominant one. It's always the guy who's like kind of like, like, and again, in a lot of pornos, the girl actually initiates, right? I know pornos don't have like the best litmus test of like what actually happens in reality, but like in a lot of pornos, it's like the girl's the one that hits on the guy. But when it comes to the actual sex, the guy's the one that's being more dominant. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't watch a lot of pornos, so I can't really say. But
of course not.
But what I can say is that, yeah, I think most sex is vanilla. At least that's my understanding. I might be wildly off on this, but like, just like, I think like if we're to talk about like dom or sub types of relationships, like, or even in just bed, I think that's, to my understanding, like not how the majority of people do sexual stuff even, but I might be wrong. Like it's like that's just my current understanding of things.
There's a massive gray area between vanilla and being a dom and sub type of relationship. Like you could be dominant in bed, without being in a dominant sub relationship. Like I've never had like a dominant sub relationship. That's like 3 levels further. Like I don't know, it seems like too much work for my taste. But I would definitely wouldn't say I'm like vanilla in bed. So there's definitely a good amount of like gray area between those. Like vanilla is like fucking like, okay, let's turn the lights off and I'm gonna fuck you a missionary for 5 minutes. Like that's vanilla. You know, if you're like slapping the girl's ass and like biting her and choking her and maybe even using a sex toy, like you're outside the vanilla category. Yeah, I do think a lot of people are into that. But not everyone gets to experience that. And that unfortunately is also what causes a good amount of cheating, because if the girl, I've seen this play out multiple times, the girl's like really into something that's like a little bit less vanilla, and the guy's like super boring in bed, she sometimes will seek that need elsewhere. And that could be with a new guy on Tinder. And it might even be with someone like me, right? So like I've seen that happen so many times where the girl's like, it seems like the relationship is good. It just, the guy just is like too vanilla for her taste, and she wants a, you know, a more spicy experience. So you do have to be at the very least on the same level of kinkiness as your girl, I think.
Yeah, I could agree there. I think most people need to have like a similar kink level if they're gonna like for the relationship to be good and bad. Otherwise, you're always gonna have a dissatisfied partner. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the show Love Is Blind?
Yes, I've seen a couple of episodes actually of Love Is Blind. Yeah.
Did you see the latest season?
I only watched the first few episodes of the latest season, but I feel free to spoil. I don't care about spoilers. I like spoilers.
Okay, so like essentially, I did a video on this, but it was like actually fascinating because one of the guys, the reason he was fighting with his, I guess, fiance, because they were actually like after like they moved out of that little creepy box, they were like living together, and like they were like arguing about this a lot, is that she felt like he was too vanilla, he wasn't initiating enough, she had to be the man when it came to the bedroom. And then one interesting thing that came out, this was like a little bit of a scandal, even though I don't know why, is her text with other girls. And she was like basically making fun of the guy because one day he decided to twerk on the bed. And she's like, and she referred to him as like, yeah, this guy's probably gives me gay vibes, you know? So that's like, yeah, so that's like basically an example, I guess. It's anecdotal, but where like, you know, like women saw like it was with a guy who was like sexually submissive, and that turned her off, right? Like I think that there's examples like that for days, you know, like it's just that guy, he's going to be struggling. He's going to be struggling. I'll tell you that much.
Well, you just have to find a woman who likes to be dumb or something.
But the problem is that girl who likes to be dominant is still going to fuck another guy who's more dominant, so she can be submissive with him. So
I don't know. Have you never met a dominatrix woman? I was thinking a podcast with one the other day, and I was
I met a bunch. I've slept with a bunch of them, but they always were submissive with me. But yeah, like they typically have like two sides. The one type of guy they like to be submissive, they like to be dominant with, right? Typically, those are actually their clients. And the other type of guy they like to be submissive with, and they typically like to have both of them. That's kind of what I've noticed with the dominatrixes. I don't know. It's kind of anecdotal, but I have yet to see a relationship work where the guy was more sexually submissive than women. Let's open up the panel if you're cool with it.
Yeah, go for it.
Let me actually ask you this question real quick. I like asking feminists this question. Should a man pay on the first date?
Should a man pay on the first date? I have two separate answers for this.
Okay.
My first instinct is no, it should be 50-50. But my second instinct is like whoever asks out the other person, and I've asked out guys before, just to be clear, should probably pay. But I also don't think like the first date should be something incredibly expensive too. I think it should be like getting to know each other. So like a coffee shop or something, you know, like something cute, small, not super expensive where you can like afford to cover it, I guess. I guess you should never go on a date if you can't afford to cover it, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, like a bottle of wine or a romantic balcony or something like that. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I largely agree with that. Do you know who Ask Nelly is? Are you familiar with her?
No.
Oh God. Save yourself the mental turmoil. Yeah, she's like this feminist chick. And I would say like I've known you for about an hour and 40 minutes. I would say as far as feminists go, you're on the more mild side for sure. You're not like a hardcore feminist from what I've observed.
That's interesting because whenever I go on Freshman Fit, they're like, this crazy feminist, like she's like so delusional, and I'm just like, I just have
No,
opinions.
I don't think you're like a hardcore feminist. I think we largely agreed on like 90% of shit. But anyway, so one interesting thing with the hardcore feminists is they have this weird like double standard in their mind where they think that, you know, everything should be equal, but on a date, the guy should pay because he gets the privilege of taking her out, right?
Oh, that's so weird.
They see themselves as like the prize, and the guy's like earning them. It's a really weird mindset. And I got into a really heated debate with her about that, about paying, because she was saying that like, yeah, you know, like everything should be 50-50, but if I go out with a guy, he has to pay for everything.
I think the idea that like if you're dating someone and you're viewing it as like some sort of like prize thing, like I don't think you should date them, or I don't think you're actually like interested in a romance with them. Like you're interested in like a transactional relationship, right? Like that, I don't know, that kind of makes me cringe a little bit, because it's like I've heard feminist arguments that are like, oh well, women put a lot more effort into their appearance for the first date. They're spending a lot more money with like their like maintenance and upkeep to then the guy can at least like pay for it. But even then, I feel like those arguments are kind of weird, because it's like you can say no to the date. Like you can say no to like putting in that like amount of effort to like dress up for the date as well. Like if you feel like socially inclined to like, and you feel like it's not worth it, then just don't dress up for it. I don't know. I think it's like strange. I think it should either be 50-50 or the person who asked out the other person. Like basically final answer thing.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I'll generally speaking, when I go on a date, I'll just offer to pay simply because I just like the way a lot of girls are, and I'm not going to grandstand over something so petty. But if a girl is like, hey, no, like let's go 50-50 on it, I'll gain more respect for her. I know with my girlfriend specifically, she did that. She was like, no, come on, let's split it half. I was like, nah, don't worry about it. But that kind of gave her like bonus points in my mind. And I do respect when a girl does that. So that's like something that makes me think like, all right, maybe potential girlfriend material.
I usually the reason why I usually do 50-50 is because I've had situations before where I let the guy pay and then suddenly he feels like entitled towards like doing more things with me. And I'm just like, dude, I just met you. Like I don't like I'm not comfortable going that far with somebody I just met. Like why do you suddenly feel because you paid? Like hire an escort. Like what the fuck are you doing with me? Like go. Like I don't know.
Yeah, that is common. Pxie, okay, this is a question that this guy has asked quite a few times, but you know, it was a super chat, so I want to read it. Pxie, with 1/3 of guys not getting and more not getting in future, so he means not getting like laid or not getting any girls. Do you think men will overthrow society to get girl and start families? What are your thoughts about this?
I don't know. Part of me thinks that like this like delay. Well, two things. We had like a global pandemic, which I also think like delayed a lot of people's social development by like, you know, like 2 or 3 years. Which like, you know, at first is like kind of like whatever, 2 or 3 years, and then you're like, wait a second, no, like that's actually like can shift some statistics like a good amount. So I just like wonder if like okay, like those stats will start evening it out. I also think people are waiting later in life to have sex, like they're not having it as earlier as before, and
Really?
I don't think that's necessary. Huh?
Really?
Yeah, from my understanding, like if you look I mean, this is a very specific stat, but like just like yes, I'm 99% sure, and I want to search it up. But my camera. Hi.
Are you all right? You're good?
Yes, my camera fell. Like I accidentally touched my thing, and then it just like fell. Let me put it back.
You got to be careful when you touch your thing, Pxie. Yeah, go ahead, do your thing.
Yeah. It was my ring light that. Here. Sorry. Here. Cool. I do think. Oh, hi. This is gonna be a strange angle. I do think there's like. There. We good?
Yeah.
Okay.
We at PWF, we like your plaid schoolgirl outfit. It's top notch.
10 out of 10.
Not that. Okay, keep going.
I do think there's gonna be probably like a little bit of rise of like inceldom or extreme what is it, like these extreme echo chambers or whatever, just because the internet is so much like more precarious now than it was before. And I think that's like created like more extremist groups because it's easier to become what is it called, like radicalized online. But I don't think society is gonna be overthrown. I think it's like a very high level to achieve, and I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think I think if I had to guess, there's probably going to be like a rise of inceldom, and then it's like going to like decrease as people gain like more as we as a society gain more of understanding of how to deal with like these internet echo chambers, and then also as people grow older and get more experience to like get out of these chambers as well. Whew.
Yeah, I think that it will never happen either, simply because there is a direct correlation between your success with women and how much power you hold. So these 30% incels, do you think they hold any kind of power at all? Do you think these are decision makers? Like, do you think these are CEOs? Like, these are all people who have, like, on average, very little, if no power. Because the people who have a lot of power are generally probably doing more or less pretty good with women, or at the very least, they're paying for prostitutes because they have so much money. So yeah, it's like you're not going to have someone who's at the very bottom, because the people at the top, the people who are actually like have the power, they're probably not struggling with women. So when they wouldn't even ever consider like changing things because the current dynamic is working well for them. So yeah, I think it's like a 0% chance that will happen. I mean, nothing is ever 0%, but I think it's very, very low, simply because of that that correlation between power and you know, your whatever success with women. So yeah, I don't foresee that happening at all. Incels overthrowing, yeah, no, it's not going to happen. Yeah. So what was the next thing? Oh yeah, guys, I dropped the link. So if anyone wants to jump on, feel free. Here we go. I'll drop the link one more time. Let me ask you this question. This is something I'm sure you've been asked on Fresh and Fit or other Red Pill podcasts. So a lot of things they talk about is body count, and I do think they kind of talk about it way too much. But where do you stand on a woman's value being affected by her body count?
So I think everybody is entitled to have their own preferences, no matter like what they be, generally speaking. Actually, caveat, as long as you're not harming anyone else, right? So I don't think a pedophile is entitled to those preferences, for example. Yeah. But generally speaking, you're entitled to whatever preferences you want. So if for you personally, a woman with a high body count is a turnoff, you're allowed to have that preference. I'm not gonna be like, no, don't have your preference. I will say that I think it's not the best preference to have. I think you're overvaluing this one aspect of a woman's life over so many other qualities that I think are so much more important, right? So I think like, let's say you have a girl with a body count of like 3 versus a girl who has a body count of 12 or whatever. But the girl who has a body count of 12 is like, you know, super kind, super nice, like a super 10 out of 10 hottie, like likes all the same things that you like. You can have interesting conversation with her, all of that stuff. Like with that, I don't even know what people consider high body count, because I think my frame of reference is also skewed to most
more
people.
Than 0. No, I don't know. I think probably they would say double digits or something.
Okay, so would you really be like, she's a hoe, she belongs in the streets, she's not wifey material because like she's slept with like 12 people, even though she like meets like everything else? Like, I don't know. And I think people, and this is maybe something that like me and FNF disagree on and stuff, I also think people change throughout their life, right? So I think, you know, even if somebody goes through like a hoe phase or whatever, like, I'm not saying you should completely discount a person's past, but I think what matters most is how the person is now and how you foresee them being in the future, right? So usually people have like, I don't say traumatic event, but they have like some like events that do change the way that they interact with the world and the way that they are internally. And I think what matters a lot more rather than somebody's past is somebody's present. So I think that should be the number one criteria you're keeping in mind when dating someone. It's like, who are they now versus who they were like 10 years ago?
Well, you like need to, you might not know who they are now. So you need to make a decision based on past factors, right? Like, for example, if you're hiring someone for a job, you don't know how good they're going to be at the job that hasn't started yet. So that's why you look at their past experience. You call, you know, people who employ with them. You're trying to make a decision. But in theory, someone could, you know, have had bad job experiences, but do really great at your job, right? But again, you don't know that. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. So you're trying to make a decision about that. I do agree that the Red Pill community completely overvalues the importance of body count. I do think there's more important metrics. But at the same time, I'll be honest. Would I get into a relationship with a girl who has a body count of 200 or 300? Probably not. And not even because that makes her like inherently worse. It's just that like, what does that signal about her? Well, to me, if a girl has a body count that's like that high, like 200, 300, she probably is one of several things. Either she's very, very novelty driven, so she just craves that novelty, right? Which wouldn't be good for a committed relationship. Number two is that she's a narcissist, right, or something like that, and she just only cares about herself. Not necessarily, but it could be the case. Or number three is that she simply has she's seeking validation elsewhere. So she has self-esteem issues, and she seeks validation through sex. But neither one of those things is a good thing for sex, because typically a woman's sexual strategy when they're single isn't to fuck like hundreds of guys. It's typically to like fuck like to find like 2 or 3 cool guys that they can see regularly, right? But the vast majority of women, even women who have a high sex drive, when they're single, they're not going to try to fuck like hundreds of guys, right? Their whole thing is going to be find like a few guys that are consistent, that fuck them really well, and stick with those guys until they get into a relationship. So that by default, it's like, okay, well, like then why is the body count 300? Well, again, it's probably because she's highly novelty driven, or she has self-esteem issues, right? Would you agree with my logic?
Yeah, no, I agree with your logic, but I also think keeping in mind, like, well, I think I might be wrong, but I think the 200, 300 are very like extreme examples. I think we're talking about like general, like
not in Miami.
Yeah, but Miami is like its own like little weird. Honestly, this sounds strange. I feel bad for fresh and fit guys, and I feel bad in general for people who live in Miami. I'm not gonna lie, because I feel like this is its own like little weird bubble of like interaction and people. Because like I've lived in New York, I've gone like clubbing in New York, like even like somewhat regularly. And even then, like just the people there compared to the people in Miami is just like a whole different like species and breed.
Yeah,
it's
no,
insane
you're right.
to me.
It is different, but this is one thing I always push back on. There are really great people in Miami. Like my girlfriend's awesome. My ex-girlfriend was awesome. My friends are awesome. Like there's really like the girls you see on Fresh and Fit isn't like representative of like the average girl in Miami. Like most girls are actually not like that. Most girls are pretty chill, you know. They might be a little bit more superficial than girls in New York, but on average, like the girls you see on Fresh and Fit are not representative of the average girl in Miami. So I just want to mention that. But yeah. So there's really cool, normal people here. Okay.
Yeah. I just think what is it? Maybe I'm just like too much focused on like Fresh and Fit or specific like club, very specific club Miami girls. Because I feel like I don't know, sometimes the things that they talk about, I'm just like, what the fuck reality are you living in? And I think like this might have to do a lot with new money versus old money dynamics, or the dynamics of like people who are like entertainers and the type of people like they attract when it comes to relationships versus like more like regular types of people, if that makes sense. Because I feel like I feel like you attract a lot of people that are similar to you, right? So when it comes to like Fresh and Fit, like they say all these things about women, but I also keep thinking in my mind, like I would not doubt if the majority of women you met were that way, because those are the only types of women that will like consistently interact with you, right? The vast majority of women, unless if they're like also like another streamer or entertainer, like if they go on that podcast and they hear the shit you're saying about women, either they're not going to want to speak out because they're afraid you're going to dogpile them, which I've had girls afterwards tell me like, I agreed with what you were saying, I just was afraid that like they were going to like shit on me. Or two, there are people like who, wouldn't take the time of day. They wouldn't bother. Like, why would I like keep interacting with you, especially outside of the Fresh and Fit studio, right? We're talking about like hanging out casually and stuff. Like, why would I take my time and like keep hanging out with you, spending time with you when you say all these like horrible things about women? Like, it just makes more sense for me to just find other people I enjoy, right? Unless if you're staying there because you agree with how they view women as a whole. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a massive element of a sample bias, right? And like how does like modern or fresh meet girls, right? Well, primarily 2 ways. Number one, from seeking, right? Those are not the cream of the crop. And number 2, from girls who go on their podcast, right? It's kind of is what it is. So who are the type of girls who are going to go on their podcast? Well, it's mainly going to be girls who have something to gain, right? Like girls who are influencers, content creators, right? It's not going to be like a lot of like your average girl. Like for example, my girlfriend, there's like no fucking way that she, even if she didn't know who they were, blah, blah, that she would go on the podcast. Like, why would she? Like, it doesn't benefit her in any way. Like, she would watch like some of the previous episodes, like, okay, these guys are kind of rude. They believe in a lot of shit I don't believe. I have a regular job. This could potentially make me look bad. Like, why would I go on that? And I think that's a lot of girls. So there's a massive sample bias that exists. And I would say that when it comes to like content creators or girls who are like trying to grow their cloud, obviously there's exceptions, some cool ass fucking female content creators. But those, on average, I would say, are going to be a lot shittier than like your average working girl. So I do think there's like a massive sample bias that goes on, but you can't like at the same time conclude that that's like your average Miami girl or that's your average girl more broadly. I mean, there was a funny moment where I think, what's his name? Destiny asked Fresh, like, what percentage of girls in Iowa, in a small town in Iowa, do you think are getting flown out to Dubai? And he was like, I don't know, 40%. It's like, motherfucker, it's not even 1%. Like, so this is like, they've just, because of the massive sample bias, they've just completely like deluded themselves into thinking what the average girl is like. It's like if you hang out like a fucking, I don't know, like you're meeting guys only on Seeking.com and you're like, yeah, the average guy, he's like trying to cheat on his wife and he's like trying to flex his Lambo. It's like, that's not the average guy. That's just the average guy you're encountering.
Yeah, no. That's why I also I mean, even I got into it from my family for going on Fresh and Fit before. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, when I stream, like I host my numbers, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, but like and this sounds really bad. I don't think anyone is beneath me. Like I feel like, with a very few exceptions, obviously, but we're not going to get into that.
What are the exceptions? I want to know.
Like a pedophile, serial killer, like
okay, like something crazy. Okay.
Yeah, but I think generally speaking, Hitler, I guess.
Well, you know, he was pretty accomplished, and I hear he was really good to dogs. You know, I hear he did a lot, and he built the Autobahn. So I mean,
yeah. Nick Fuentes, hello.
Hitler had like a thing with Jews, you know, as long as you're not Jewish.
Just a tiny, no biggie. But yeah, so I feel like in general, when I go into these platforms, I'm like genuinely just trying to have like an actual conversation with a person, and I'm just like trying to understand where they're coming from and trying to be like, oh, well, maybe there's like a flaw here, or hey, no, that's actually a really good point. But I don't know if it's even worth me going on anymore, because like the last time I went there, do you know Sneeko?
Yeah, not my favorite character, but yeah.
Yeah, Sneeko and Zerka, like they kept being like, oh, this woman, she just wants to argue just to argue, like she's just trying to argue, blah 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 blah. And it's like they couldn't. I pointed it out. I was like, you guys are only saying that because you can't respond to what I'm saying. Like only Myron is able to respond to what I'm saying, and like you guys are not able to respond at all, and that's why you're saying that. But then I talked to this other red pill dude recently. I went on his podcast, and I felt like he couldn't respond. Huh?
Who are we talking about?
I think his name is FidX Fearless.
Oh yeah, I know who that is. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he started saying the same thing. So it was like, I don't know if I want to talk about like my opinions and have discussions about dating and stuff, but I don't want to go somewhere if I just feel like they don't really care about what I say, or they don't even have to care about what they say, but they don't have like see me immediately in a bad faith light. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, they will absolutely see your bad faith lie. When you say you're a feminist, their brain shuts down. Enemy. So yeah, 100%. But okay, would you go on Fresh and Fit if you weren't a content creator?
No. What's the point?
That's kind of the point. Yeah, like I don't think most girls would. I think the girls to go on Fresh and Fit again, because like most of the time when you invite a girl on a podcast, she checks you out a little bit, right? I don't know if you do that with me at all, or are you just trying to?
Well, I already knew some of your stuff. Like I haven't like ever like watched it super in depth, but I knew that you talked to like what is it, Destiny? You've talked to Melina before, right? Or no?
I met her, but I've never talked to her publicly.
Okay, but I like knew about you, like generally speaking. So I was like, okay, like I feel this is sound bad. I feel like when I say that I'm gonna go talk to someone, if there's someone like bad or dangerous or like gonna be bad faith with me, like everybody avoids me. Like everyone's like, all my friends or like whoever are just like, oh, warning, and that didn't happen with you. So
well, I'm glad I have a good reputation in the feminist community. But yeah, so like sorry, what you were saying earlier about not going on. Oh yeah, so like what I was saying is I think like most of the time a girl like is not going to go into a podcast willy-nilly. She'll do at least a little bit of research, or she'll ask around, right? And like, what are you gonna see when you YouTube or Google Fresh and Fit? You're gonna see dumb ratchet bimbo gets kicked out for disrespecting, right? And it's like you're gonna look at that and you're gonna be like, okay, like why the fuck would I go through that? And again, the only reason you probably would is if there's something in it for you, like, you know, like you can get good content. If it's you, like, you know, good content. If you can blow up your Instagram, blow up your OnlyFans, right? That's like Michael 13 actually made a very, very interesting observation, which I found very, very entertaining. So there was this like OnlyFans, whatever chick that went on Fresh and Fit, and she got like roasted. Like everyone was going in on her saying blah, 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 modern woman, blah, blah, blah. And then she got like 800 new OnlyFans subscribers within a week.
Holy
like,
shit.
Crazy amount. And he was talking to her about it. He's like, hey, would you go on again? He's like, listen, everyone was rude to me, but I made like fucking $50,000. Hell yeah, I would.
Oh my gosh.
So a lot of this audience that's like at the same time like knocking women down at the same time are being hypocrites and actually like jerking off to their OnlyFans.
Yeah, no, I think what is it? I think a lot of men in society are like upset because they feel like when it comes to like sexuality related stuff, they feel like women have more power. And then they also are upset because they don't feel like they have the same amount of status that they would have had before women were able to like work or get jobs. So I feel like it manifests in these ways where they want to like simultaneously like look down on women who, you know, have that power in a way, like, you know, or they're sexually attracted to them, like they, you know, they feel like an attraction towards them. I forgot where I was going. I got distracted by the comment. But basically, yeah, like they want to look down on those women. But at the same time, like they can't help but want to give money or want to see them naked or want to have like that level of sexuality with them. So you just end up with these weird situations.
A lot of people are hypocrites, and the red pill community is no different. In fact, I think the red pill community is some of the biggest fucking hypocrites I've ever encountered. Feminists too, to some extent, but yeah, like there's this dude. Do you know who Donovan Sharp is?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, consider yourself lucky. But anyway, so this dude, he constantly rails like, you never want to date a single mom. Single moms are, you know, whatever, suck, and you don't want to date these promiscuous women. And he marries a promiscuous woman who's a single mom who's older than him, right? Which is fine in of itself. There's nothing wrong with that. Just that he's been railing about like how you want a younger girl, you want her to be sexually conservative, and you definitely don't want her to be a single mom. And then like, so it's just like a lot of these guys just do the opposite of what they say.
Yeah, no, I feel like I think that's so true, especially when it comes to like sexual wise. Like, oh, this is another kind of fight that me and Myron had or whatever, where I'm just like, oh, like you're saying that this is like, well, I was saying like, you say that men like can't help but sleep around, that it's in their nature, blah, 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 blah. But then you're getting like mad at these women for following their nature, right? Because he's arguing that like women just want to look at the highest provider, like they're shallow. And I don't even agree with that. But it's like, okay, let's say I grant you that. What are we doing now? Like you're just saying like, oh no, like men should be able to do this, but women doing this is like kind of bad. Or like, you know, it's like what's wrong with society that they just like keep sleeping around for the highest provider. Like, bro, like I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know why anyone would take anything Myron says about relationships seriously. He's, according to himself, has never been in a relationship or serious relationship. Like, why would you listen to someone who's like, you could listen to him about like finance or starting a podcast or maybe even like getting laid. I know he said he slept with several hundreds of girls, and I kind of believe him. But if he's never been in a relationship, why would you take his advice on relationships? Like, clearly he doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to that. So yeah, it kind of blows my mind that people, you know, like take his advice when it comes to that. It's like, dude, if I was a broke homeless person, would you take my advice about like fucking investing? Like, no, you'd be like, yeah. And oh yeah, someone brought this up. This was funny. Did you ever see the clip where Myron says the vaginas are gross?
Can somebody send me that? No, I have not seen that clip.
I can actually play it for you right now. Give me a second.
Wait, no, but send it to me because I'm making a YouTube video called "The Red Pill is Gay," and basically,
okay. If I forget, just remind me. Yeah, it's on my. I'll send it to you. That works. All right. Anyway, let's open up the panel. I know there's one guy backstage. Why don't you guys, more of you guys, jump backstage? That's why I was kind of waiting. Playing with fire. Myron is a Fed point. Yeah, I just don't believe that. I've had other people bring this up. I don't think he's a plant. I don't think the federal government cares that much about the manosphere or the red pill community. So I can't really prove that, but I really, really like it. What do you think about this theory that Myron is like a Fed plant?
That's so funny. I don't think he's a Fed plant. I feel like he generally believes all the things he says, but I don't think he's a Fed plant.
No, definitely not. Okay, let's bring on the first person, Junior. Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Good. So I have two questions. I think I'll start with Alex first because you just said it. So you said that Alex, you said that Myron probably can teach you how to get laid, but he can't teach you how to be in a relationship, right?
Well,
go
ahead.
Okay, what? Didn't you say to Erudite when you were in the debate that that sleeping with a girl is directly related to relationships? Like you can't get in a relationship with a girl unless you know how to fuck her, right? Isn't that what you say?
Yeah. So what I said was, and I'm actually going to do a video on this in the next few days to kind of explain this more. Is that the early stage of a relationship are directly the same thing as hooking up with a girl, but there's a lot that happens after the hookup that is unique to a relationship that doesn't apply to one night stand. So he has some of the skill sets when it comes to relationships because he can get laid allegedly, but he doesn't have the other part of the skill sets because he's never gone past the hookup phase, again, according to what he said.
Okay, now let's skip that right now. What's like Pxie?
Just to give you like an example, I think good communication is something that's very important for relationships. It's not really important for like getting laid at hookups, right? And I've had to like develop that like quality, like being able to communicate in an effective way with my girlfriend to make my relationships like more successful. And I didn't used to be good at that. I didn't used to be good at like effective communication. But like I can't just like, if my girlfriend's upset with me, I can't just be like, you're wrong, here's why. I have to be able to like make her understand my worldview, and that's a skill set. So that's just one example of like how there's things that are required in relationships. I mean, also like generally speaking, for most guys, when it comes to sleeping around, you'll just sleep with any girl who's attractive. You don't really care about her personality. But when it comes to a relationship, most guys do, or at least you should care about her personality, her values, right? So there's a lot of massive element of screening based on her traits and values that comes into a relationship that doesn't really play into one night stands. Okay, sorry, keep going.
All right, cool. Pxie, right? Okay, so you said that you want men to communicate more with women in general and talk about their feelings and express that, right? Correct?
Yes, obviously. This is. Oh, sorry, I'm getting like a buzz. But like, I think there's certain ways to do this correctly and certain ways to do this incorrectly. And the reason why I say that is because like sometimes men take what I say and they're like, oh, but like when I suddenly express my emotions by breaking my Xbox and throwing my controller to the wall, like now my woman isn't attracted to me anymore. And it's like, I think it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, is that there's ways to be expressive about your emotions without being like, you know, destructive or throwing a temper tantrum. So I think you should be expressive in those ways.
I don't think guys are like, most guys think that way, that the way to be expressive is, okay, I got to break shit. But regardless of that, you say like, so how can a person really come to you if you not really understand the problem? Because Alex asked about incels, and then you said, okay, maybe they should not just talk about, they shouldn't worry about it, or maybe hire an escort. But that seems like from a person that wouldn't understand what the heck to do. How can you want a guy to express feelings when you don't understand the problem? You don't empathize with the problem. You're saying advice that. Well,
I think I do kind of understand certain. I don't understand 100% of every problem, right? That's just something very human. I think I do understand quite a bit about inceldom, and the reason why I said the escort thing is because a large part of inceldom, and I know because I've gone on these forums before. I used to be on these forums every day because it was just like so interesting to me. Is this idea that sex is this life-changing, curing thing, right? And women are selfish creatures for not wanting to give it to men because it's such
guys are hogging it. You guys are hogging it.
Yeah, literally. It's such a small act that women won't give, even though it'll like solve all these men's problems. And it's like, no, like it's not about the sex. Like it's not going to solve problems.
Do you see my receding hairline? This will be solved with sex. Okay?
Yeah, I don't know about solving problems, but it's an issue they want to be solved. It's not the end all be all of everything. Like, yeah, if I have sex, I'm not going, okay, I'm a great guy now. I can live a happy life. But it's an issue they express.
Yeah,
so shouldn't your goal be like, okay, how do I can help them combat and get that goal instead of saying, well, don't worry about it, or maybe hire an escort. It seems like a person, you don't have to worry about getting that problem. So you will never understand about like the other side of it because you don't have to worry about that. That's why it doesn't seem that important to you.
I first of all, I don't think that this is not necessarily not important. To me, this is important because I think it's very sad that we live in a society where you have scores of men believing that sex is going to like basically help be the key to their happiness, because that's not true for anyone. I do think this is something.
But that's not what I said. But but
you're saying it's
not what I said. Be the key to happiness. That's one of the things they want to get. It's not like I get sex. That's one thing. It's one of the things they want to achieve.
Okay, so that's a different question. That's a different question than inceldom as a whole, right? Because that is an aspect of inceldom. But correct me if I'm wrong. Inceldom isn't just, I'm having trouble having sex. Inceldom is a whole ideology. You have like entire like forums dedicated to talking about like the ins and outs of inceldom and what that exactly means. And you even have people saying like, oh yeah, like just hiring an escort isn't enough to get you out of inceldom because it's not really just about sex. So I was talking about specifically about incels who think it's all about sex, when in reality, like there is more layers to this.
Well,
even then,
comments.
I'm almost done. Even then, in all relationships, just because of the nature of being a human being, you're never going to 100% understand what another person went through unless you literally went through that, right? That happened. That's reality of everything, right? I am never going to be the same exact person as another human being. But what I can do is I can try to form like bridges of understanding. So I can start with a place of empathy, being like, wow, like, maybe I haven't gone through exactly that, but I understand like sadness. I understand how it feels to be hurt when you're rejected by someone. I understand how it feels to put your value in something that at the end of the day, you shouldn't be putting your value in, and start working from there, right? Like those are common bridges where even though you did not experience the same life as somebody else, you can form a level of empathy and deeper understanding there.
Yeah, I understand that. But then when you say that, and then your answer to Alex when he says about the incel is completely like off the mark, how can like a guy want to come to you? Like, so like maybe you're a better option than the red pill. Okay, cool. And then they come to you and then you say that advice. They're not like, okay, what is this girl talking about? That's not how I feel at all.
That wasn't my only piece of advice.
Sorry, Junior, just to be fair, I do think we need to clarify that she's not a dating coach, right? She's just a debater, right? Is that correct? You're not a dating coach?
No, but
So
but she seems like she wants to help the dynamic of man and woman understand each other, and that's a fundamental disagreement about what's going.
Well, there's two things also to break down here. One, I said that advice isn't going to make somebody happy. I'm saying that advice is somebody who idealizes sex, right? Who thinks sex is the most important thing ever. Like taking away that mystique from sex can help. Now, is that going to be perfect advice for everybody? No, obviously not. People react differently to different stimuluses, right? For what somebody might work is like taking away that mystique. That might not work at all for anybody else. So when it comes to problems, like, you don't just say this one solution is the golden cure, the golden ticket. What you talk about is a variety of solutions, which is what I tried to do. And I apologize if I didn't do it well, right? So I said first, like, if you have this high idealization of sex, you might want to get rid of that. But if that's not your problem, you're just like upset because like you feel like you're not doing that well with women, well, then maybe you should focus on things that like bring you more confidence internally, which then can help you with other women, right? And then that led to a discussion of like, external stimulus. So there's more than one thing that you can do when it comes to this advice. It just depends on the type of person you are.
So how about we isolate for all those factors? What if the guy is okay? He has a good job. He's decent with friends. He's happy. He's talking to people. He's traveling, stuff like that. Good stuff. Communicating well with others. Now the only problem is he would like his sex life to improve. What is your advice? How would you want to care about helping that? Do you say, okay, just not, or is that?
I mean, the best thing I can say, if you're saying, if this guy in general is very charismatic, he's doing.
Well, not very charismatic. He's just normal. Like, not most people are just not very charismatic. So most people are just average. Okay. So like, he's good. Has friends. He talks to people. He works a job, but he's not really getting laid. So like, and that's might be a problem. Maybe it's not a big problem for you, but or maybe you don't think it's a big, huge deal about that. But it seems like he gets that big. It seems like he gets a big deal to him. And then if you just keep on pushing off and saying like that's not really a big deal or don't worry about it, then it becomes where he comes from.
I never said, oh, it's like not a big deal. I'm just saying it's not the only deal. It's not what you should not hate yourself just because you're not having sex, right? Like, okay, let's say you currently do feel that way. Let's focus on how to change that, or like what things that you could do to improve your self-esteem regarding that. But I don't think you should be like, oh, I'm not having sex, I suck as a human being, I'm low value, like my life is like horrible, like I'm the worst person ever. Like, no, like there are good things about yourself that you should love separate from sex.
Good, Pxie, but
yeah.
So I think that's a good way of like explaining it. Pxie is a woman, obviously, and she's not a dating coach or a psychologist. It's really hard for women to truly grasp certain issues. They're men only, just like it is hard for men to grasp. Like we as men will never, again, unless we're psychologists or something like that, understand the physical safety element that women have to deal with, right? Like when they're walking home, when they're on a date, when they're worried about their life. We just don't have to experience that, right? And we understand it logically, but it's hard for us to like really grasp how much that affects their function. So I think this is another. I do think, like I said, that a lack of sex can really destroy a man's mental health. But yes, it's not the end all be all. There's definitely more to it. But I've just experienced it with myself and with my clients. It can definitely like destroy a man's mental health. And I think what you're saying is correct. It's like, okay, well, you got more things going on. You should probably like not obsess about that. But again, it always circles back to, okay, well, how do I go about doing that?
Yeah, I think when it comes to like how it goes about doing that, like saying like, okay, what Alex said earlier about focusing on the little wins first and like trying to change your mindset in that way, I think that's a good way to approach it. I think another good way to approach it is to like, if you are doing the acts, like the mistake, or I don't want to say mistake, if you end up obsessing about it too hard to the point where you're like neglecting all these other beautiful aspects of your life, then trying to reshift your focus there. Like I don't think there's one golden ticket to solve everybody's sexual problems, because obviously it's going to change depending on like why that person is having trouble getting sex, right? So if the reason why a person's having trouble getting sex is because they're not putting themselves out there enough, they're focusing too much on their L's instead of W's, well, that's going to be a different prescription than a person who every time they talk to a girl, they talk to her as like an exotic animal. You know what I mean? Like there are like obviously different problems regarding to how you're getting sex is going to lean that different solutions.
Yeah, that's true. There's probably like 2, 3, 4 common problems that incels deal with. And yeah, one of them is a complete lack of interaction with women. I know one dude, good guy, like him a lot. He's been on my panel a bunch of times. He got the height increasing surgery. So that makes you like 3 or 4 inches taller. Actually interviewed him for a video I'm doing. But anyway, so he was a virgin, right? He was an incel. And I asked him like, okay, well, how many girls were you interacting with? He's like 0. And then since the surgery, okay, how many girls have you been interacting with? 0, right? So, him becoming taller isn't going to change his results if he's talking to 0 girls. So, yeah, I do agree with that. Okay, anyway, sorry. Keep going, Junior. Well, you get like the final word.
All right. So, so one of your, I kind of bringing it back still. One of your advice is not to think about it too much. Destiny had a point that said that people that get more sex are people that actually pursue it. So how do you reconcile that? Like he brought up some study in a debate with, I guess, with Rollo, that people that pursue sex, regardless of how they look, get sex because they're pursuing it more. So you're saying you're.
Yeah, you can pursue something without caring about it significantly, right? Like when I worked in sales, I was very persistent and aggressive, but if I didn't get a sale from a customer, I didn't really care. because I knew that I was going to get other sales. So you can be very persistent, talk to girls, but not really care about each individual outcome because you're like, whatever, yeah, I'll work out with another girl. Oh, wait, sorry. I don't know if this question was just for Pxie, but that's kind of my answer. But yeah, Pxie can answer her.
Well, go ahead. You can answer too, Pxie.
I mean, that's basically kind of my answer too, that these are not like mutually exclusive things. I was thinking, I don't know if this is a good analogy, but it's kind of like when you're going to get food or you're going to a restaurant, like let's say you're hungry and you go out. There's a difference between like, oh, I'm hungry, like I'm gonna go pursue this restaurant, I'm gonna sit down here, eat the food, whatever. Oh no, they ran out of everything in the menu, I'll just go to the next one, right? You're technically like pursuing food in that way. There's a difference between that and between like staying obsessed at a restaurant because you can't get that specific meal and like just like, oh my god, like this was gonna be the best food ever and like, I can't get it now and like, oh holy fuck, what am I gonna do? Like, you know, there's a difference between like I guess like I don't say crime of opportunity, but kind of like that, like, oh, it comes, like, all right, like, yeah, I'll go for it, versus like, this is my life now.
All right, and then the last thing I have to say, I have like 8 minutes. About the dynamics. There's something about you guys were talking about the dynamics about women who's more emotional. I forgot 70%, 30%, 50%, something about that. Let me see. What was it?
We
What
were
were guys talking about earlier in the debate?
Yeah, we were debating about whether my claim was that a relationship with a man is less emotional is going to work out better than a relationship with a man who's more emotional.
Oh yeah. So yeah, you said you had 5 relationships so far. So what were times where you were more emotional, or I guess the guy was, and that you were more attracted to that? Since I guess you said,
well,
or
I said I had
50-50.
She said she had 3 or 4.
Yeah, I have 3 or 4.
Okay, then 3 or 4.
Personally, like emotionality never like bothered me. The only time it bothered me is when I felt like the person was getting like obsessed to a point where they were like angry at me for like I'm a person who's very bad at texting, like just generally speaking. And I'm usually very upfront about this with like all my relationships. I'm just like, hey, like I suck at texting. It has nothing to do with whether how much I care about you or not. It has everything to do with my ADHD. And I get overwhelmed sometimes and just have to like get off social media, get off my phone, whatever. Like this, it's nothing personal. And then it just became to a point where it just felt like that person was upset at me over things that are honestly like I can control them for a little bit, but generally speaking, they're out of my control because my mind is just not processing time or social media the same way that other people's minds do it because of my ADHD. And then to me, that's when it started like running into like a lot of problems because it's like, okay, like I this is just how I function. This is just how I am. And I've tried changing myself, not even for you, but like to other people before. And it doesn't last long because I literally just like biologically I'm different in that way. So like that's when it started bothering me, where it was like, okay, like we're not going to be able to reach a compromise here. We're not going to be able to reach like a middle ground here because you don't want a middle ground. I don't like I'm okay trying to figure something out, but it doesn't seem like that's enough for you. Like I just don't think things are going to work.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
That's all my questions for now. Yeah, I have to go back, but thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you. All right, have a good night. All right, we got another super chat. Pxie, what is the top negative attitude perspective you think women have on dating, and how would you socialize or train it out of them?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I do think that I think it kind of does have to go with the emotionality thing. I think some women are socialized to like not be okay if like a guy cries, or to not be okay if a guy is like emotional. And I don't think that's okay. I think that's really unhealthy. That's how you get really bad relationship dynamics. So I think like when it comes to like women being that way, but I also think women don't know how to say no strongly enough in relationships, and then that ends up to them being like giant pushovers, and that ends up with like a lot of resentment also. So I feel like women have to just be like clear with their communication and like not be so hostile at the thought of like, oh my god, this other guy is a human being, they're gonna have emotions, like, you know, if he cries, like that's not a bad thing, that's a human thing, like what the fuck.
Okay. I could respond to that, but I think we'll just be circling back to the debate we had earlier. Okay. Let's do one more round of people, and then let's wrap up because we're going on like 2 hours and 20 minutes. I'll just bring both people backstage on at once, so just don't talk over each other, guys. So we got Cold Steel and Brad, and let's try to like maybe make this round like 7 or 8, 9 minutes, so we can wrap up before it gets too late. Okay, yeah. So, what do you guys want to talk about?
Yeah. Can I go first?
Sure.
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah. Hey, Pixie, can I let me ask you? So you said you're agnostic about the man being the leader and being in charge in a relationship.
Yeah, like ideally I would want it to be like closer to 50-50. Like I don't want him to lead everything. Like that would get annoying. And I don't want to lead everything either.
Okay, but you ever heard of the friend zone?
Yes, I've heard of friend zone.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a men get put in the friend zone. Funny, it doesn't happen the other way around. And if men and women if everything was equal and 50-50, you wouldn't have like 30% of guys not getting laid while 100% of women getting laid. So men and women are not exactly the same. That's the proof right there.
I personally, I don't know if this is too anecdotal. I know women who have gotten stuck in the friend zone super hard.
Yeah,
but either
that's
way,
an exception.
no, I am not sure about that. I feel like, or I guess like if it's enough to fuck, it's outside of the friend zone for you guys, right?
Yeah, if you just friends means there's no sex, no romance.
Okay, because I know a lot of girls who are still in friend zone regardless, who guys like don't find them like attractive. But regardless of that, that's my anecdotal experience.
Pixie, do you
You could be a 9 out of 10 guy and be in the friend zone. That doesn't happen if you're a 9 out of 10 woman in looks.
Are you talking about girls who guys will fuck but they won't date them? Because
girls that guys are just like not interested, or not like the friend group isn't interested, I guess, or in a way. But that might also because of the more complicated like factors, like not wanting to like disturb peace and shit like that or whatever. So I don't want to get too stuck into that because that's my anecdotal experience. I think it's true that if guys did not pursue women, you probably would not have a lot of guys getting laid because it seems like women are less inclined to pursue men and be satisfied with that, while men feel like they have to pursue women to be satisfied. So I agree with that. But that, again, that's different. That's like trying to fuck versus an actual relationship and day-to-day dynamics in a relationship, right?
Yeah,
so you can have so you can have a relationship that starts because the guy is like trying to pursue the girl, whatever, and then they start dating. But that doesn't mean the girl wants him to make like every decision or even the majority of decisions regarding like where they're gonna stay, how rent is gonna be split, if it's gonna be split, the cooking, the whatever, dinner, restaurant, day to day, right? There's a lot of decisions that come up like day to day that require leadership from one or the other party that doesn't come up necessarily in the beginning of pursuing someone. Like these are two separate things.
Okay, the relationship doesn't even happen if the man doesn't take the lead, because the man has to take the lead to make things sexual or romantic, or the man will be in the friend zone, even if he's like amazing, good looking, even if he was a male model. Well, women who are models don't get put in the friend zone.
Generally true, but not always. There are some relationships where honestly, and I wouldn't believe it, but I've heard it on the podcast where girls like fucking initiate the whole thing.
Yeah,
I mean that's the exceptions to every rule.
That is
but
the exception. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the most obvious example of the man has to take the lead or to make things happen. Yeah. And not only that, the man has to make 100% of the effort to make the relationship happen. He had to approach the woman, ask her out, oftentimes follow up on dates, things like that. And then during the relationship, the woman's constantly getting approached by other guys, asking her out, etc., etc. So the man is always going to be more invested in the relationship than the woman. So the man has to be in charge. You know what I mean? You can't like work for you know what I'm saying?
I do agree that the girl will get approached a lot, but why would that mean the man has to be more invested?
Yeah, so she's less invested because she's constantly getting approached by other guys, so she could date other guys very easily.
No, I
Well,
don't
the man, like if they're in a relationship, the man wouldn't be constantly asking out other girls, but there are other guys asking out his girl constantly,
No,
right?
I don't agree that by default she's going to be less invested, because girls will typically won't even categorize those guys as options, right? They'll see like, oh, random weirdo, creep, or whatever. Like, yeah, any attractive girl.
That's if he was a weirdo or creep. But what if he was attractive, confident, had game,
She's still
just as much, if not more, than her boyfriend? That doesn't mean that she's gonna leave him for the boyfriend. But I'm saying that the man, that's why the man has to be dominant, because that's how she's going to be more loyal to her own man.
Well, I do think the man should be dominant, but I don't think that a girl by default, because she gets approached a lot, is going to be less invested in the relationship. That's not what I've seen with any of my personal relationships.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you're in love with a guy, like, and you believe that he's like your life partner or whatever, it doesn't matter if you get approached by like 30 other dudes. Like, this is a guy that you have decided you want to be with.
No, hold on. No, I'm saying if the guy has to be dominant to make her invested in the relationship. Otherwise, just due to logic, she won't be. If they're both equal in every way, logic dictates that she won't be as invested, because there are constantly other guys hitting her up. That would be the equivalent of her man constantly asking out other girls.
We just established that just because other guys are hitting on the girl doesn't dictate level of investment for the girl. So the logic doesn't follow on that.
Yeah, okay, but the man already invested it by approaching you, asking you out, say, hey, let's do this, hey, let's do that. So he already invested. The woman made no effort.
The woman makes effort by.
So hold on. Let me finish real quick. The only way the woman makes an effort is if the guy takes the lead, take charge, and then she has to follow his lead. That's the only way she has to make an effort is if the guy makes her make an effort.
The girl will be less invested if the guy is like not dominant, is because her sexual needs are not being met. It has nothing to do with her being approached or not. I haven't seen any kind of correlation between like any girl who's like even average looking is being approached like by guys.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, Alex, he's basically saying if the guy's a beta and then she gets attracted by an alpha, then what's going to happen?
Exactly. Don't be naive, guys.
No, but okay.
Yeah, if her needs are not being met, sure. Yeah.
Not just sexually. I'm talking about just due to logic, just being in the relationship.
Yeah, emotionally too, but it's still, I don't think it has to do with how many guys are approaching her. But let's let Pxie respond. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say as we established earlier, like the level of investment on a woman doesn't have to do with like other men like approaching her. It has to do with like how satisfied she's in the relationship with that man, right? And if you believe that a man has to be more dominant or what? Wait, no, you don't agree with that?
The woman doesn't have to do anything whatsoever unless the guy makes her.
Okay, that's another thing. It's not that women are not doing anything whatsoever. Like,
she doesn't have to, though. She doesn't have to.
If she wants to be in a relationship, obviously she has to put some effort in. All relationships require effort. Otherwise, it's not a relationship. Like,
what effort does she have to do?
Say at the very least, if you have to put the bare minimum, she has to show up, right? That's the bare fucking minimum is showing up. No, there's more to that. Like, she obviously has to maintain like a level of conversation, a level of communication. She has to be like interesting, smart, funny. She has to provide some sort of.
Absolutely not. All she has to do is look good.
Well, that's for fucking. So you're okay with like having a relationship only because a woman looks good. That's it. You don't want a woman who is intelligent. You don't want a woman who's able to have a good conversation with you. You don't want a woman who's able to support you. You don't want a woman who has any of that. You just want a woman who looks hot. That's all you want in a relationship.
If she looks hot and just not impressive in any other way, I mean, she's just like, okay. So then
you don't want a relationship. You want a fuck buddy. You want somebody that you can stick your dick in and leave.
Okay, so say she looked amazing, right? But conversation, she was okay. She wasn't exceptionally smart, just average in every other way. No guy is gonna be like, no, she's not really, she's not good enough. It doesn't really have to make an effort unless the guy makes her make an effort.
All right, let me ask you the question. So you have two girls, but they're both hot. They're both hot as fuck. One of them is kind of a dummy, and one of them is like pretty smart, charismatic. Which one do you pick?
I would. I would pick the smarter one, but the dummy would be a close second. Because I'd still enjoy her company as long as she wasn't like weird or like a drama queen or something. You know, because not all of my friends are super. I have friends that are not super smart or geniuses or whatever, right?
I personally don't know how I would enjoy a girl's company who's a dummy. Like I wouldn't be able to talk to her about anything because she's too dumb. I mean, maybe we're thinking dummy differently, but like a girl who's like, what? Yeah, I don't know.
No, I'm not talking about like retarded. I'm just talking about just average, but not impressive.
Right, but you would prefer a girl who's like smarter, or how about like funny?
Okay.
Would you prefer a girl who's like really dull, or a girl who has a really good sense of humor?
No, that would add an extra point, but it's not a deal breaker. The looks is like 75%. I mean, like no guy is gonna done.
Sure, everyone values things a little bit differently in terms of how much weight they place on each thing. But the point is that these are not like things that are irrelevant. Like these things matter to you and me and like pretty much every guy.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, if you're saying about like the effort people are putting into a relationship, well, obviously, like for most people, if they want to be in a successful relationship, they have to each bring something of value. So that means a woman can't just look good or whatever, because then a woman who looks good but also has a good sense of humor, is intelligent, whatever, it's like usurping her, right? So when you're saying like, oh, like she doesn't have to put effort in, well, no, like if she wants to keep her guy in a relationship and the guy wants to keep her in a relationship, they both have to constantly like communicate with each other and bring the needs that each other have. Like you have to put some effort to be able to bring in those needs.
But I see what both. Let me say real quick. I see what both of you are saying, because it does depend on the guy. Like there's a lot of guys that like they'll literally tolerate anything.
Yeah, that's true.
I have an even better example. Say she looked amazing, and she was witty, she was funny, she even had a good job. You know, she was smart. You know, all of that stuff. Great for conversation. She still doesn't need to put in any effort. That's not equal to putting in effort to make it happen. There's that, like, I'm the one asking her out on dates. I'm the one say, hey, let's go out and do this. Let's go out and do that.
To maintain the relationship so that you don't lose interest. That's still effort.
No,
like you're right that men start the initial. You're right. You're right that men are usually the ones who initiate, and that's the effort that they start with, right? But women have to maintain effort to maintain a relationship. Otherwise, the relationship just falls apart. Otherwise, why wouldn't you go for the more attractive woman if you have an opportunity to be with her? Like people decide to stay in a relationship because they're both maintaining effort and fulfilling each other's needs. Otherwise, you just go look for somebody else.
But guys don't have a lot of these. Like say the woman looked amazing. She is smart, funny, and great for conversation. There's going to be no losing interest. Period. You know, they'd only be losing
because
interest.
She's maintaining effort and she's meeting the other person's needs. That's why.
No, that doesn't take any effort just to be smart and funny and her natural.
You don't think entertaining another
effort.
person? You don't think like keeping up with like interesting conversations? You think that's like you don't think that's effort at all? Like most people aren't just naturally
having a conversation. Like we're both having a conversation with each other. That's not effort on her.
Right, let me try to give you an example of what effort would look like. For example, in my relationship, the way my girlfriend puts in effort is when we hang out, she always drives to my place in the morning while I'm sleeping, because I like to sleep until 3 p.m. She'll take my dog for a walk. She watches Manosphere content so that, she stays up to date on my thing, and she'll give me really good video ideas. That's another way. She will research. I have Lyme disease, and she will spend time researching Lyme disease in order to try to help me. So those are all examples of how like legit effort that your girlfriend can put in, right? So yeah, for sure. Like I disagree with this premise. Like in the standard relationship, the girl's putting in no effort. Like,
so also, can I say something to that?
All right, real quick. Sorry, real quick. So why does she do all that stuff? Because Alex is dominant, and she knows that she has to do something to show that she's making an effort, because Alex is dominant. But if Alex was just like treating her as an equal,
I think it's like way oversimplistic. I think it has to do with the fact is that she loves me and she respects me and she's a good person who wants to help me. I think that's a more correct
Yeah,
answer.
can I say something to that? So
Go
I
ahead.
think both of these are true because with this example, it's like Natty does these things because she respects Alex, and Alex has expectations on her in the relationship
Exactly. Expectations.
that she will contribute something. But there's a lot of relationships where the woman does not respect the man, and the man is a little pussy that will just tolerate anything. This is
Well,
like
I don't
most
know because like
relationships.
I don't expect her to watch like Manosphere videos. I don't expect her to like research Lyme disease. Like she does
No,
that.
not
with me
not
You
those
do expect her
specific.
to do something to show an effort, though.
Yeah, not
Well,
those
he
specific
expects her
things, but you
to care
expect her
about
to
him
do
because why else
things
be in
for
a
you.
relationship?
Yeah,
if
I
you
do
don't
expect
care
her
about
to
each
care
other?
about me, but like I do feel like she goes
Exactly.
above and beyond with that, with like things that like I've never asked her, nor like I would have even thought of. Like
And she
like
does that because she likes you and she
yeah,
respects
because
you.
No,
she's a kind person who likes me. Yeah.
Yeah.
no. Okay, but say we were say let's keep it real. A lot of guys, if they had great conversations, had a good time hanging out together, but the guy couldn't care less if his girlfriend didn't do him any favors. Um, you'd still have she's not required. That's not her making any effort at all. The
Okay, you
guy
obviously have not. Have you ever had a conversation with someone who's just like, yeah,
that doesn't take a lot
whatever.
of effort to have a conversation and
Well,
be
no,
interesting.
you're
That's just your
literally
personality.
keeping
That's just
somebody
your
entertained. Are you
personality.
crazy? Keeping somebody entertained, willing to engage, listening to what they're saying and responding is a level of effort versus somebody who's just iPad baby on their phone the entire time you're on a
No,
date. Like obviously, like
that's really low standards of making an effort, just having a conversation.
well, it's not.
You know,
It's not just one
you
conversation. It's continuously being engaged in that other
no,
person's interest, bringing things that they might like, looking good, trying to like improve their life, be a supporter. These are
improving
all
their
markers of
life, being a
interest.
supporter. But guys don't really care about that. The reason guys care about that
Really,
is
you don't think
because
guys?
we know, because we want you to show us that you have interest, because we know that there are constantly other guys hitting you up. We want you to show
So you
to
want them
us
to put effort. You
do
want them to
something
show effort.
Yeah,
what's that?
you guys are talking about the same thing right now. Yeah, you want the girl to put in effort, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but if the
What's the
guy was a
debate?
nice guy, beta male, she knows that she doesn't have to make any effort. Like he just enjoys the conversation, enjoys that she looks great. That there's other guys constantly hitting her up, so she doesn't need to do that unless she knows that she has to.
If
Yeah.
her,
Is
Well,
the
I don't know
point?
if it has to, it wants to, but yeah, if she doesn't respect the guy, if she,
Exactly.
okay,
yeah,
but if her needs are being fulfilled and met in the relationship, if she's happy in the relationship, she's gonna want to do those things and put in effort, regardless of how many other guys are hitting on her. Like she's not just doing it out of like just respect either. She's doing it because she generally loves the other guy and she loves the relationship that they have, you know? And it's
No,
possible.
people do things that they have to do. Like say if you're working for a company, do you just like go above and beyond and do extra
Being
just
in a
because to
relationship
be
is not the
nice,
same thing as being in
or
a
because
company. You know that
I
yeah, it
there's
kind
an
mean,
of
element
is.
of
It kind
love
of is
and
because
care. I
Cole,
mean, you can drop.
sometimes you do if you really like your boss and you really care about the business and you want to help grow it. Sometimes you will go above and beyond, right? So a lot of it does come down to how much you care. Like whether you like respect your boss will play a role whether you go above and beyond, right? Whether you like your boss.
and that has to do with a lot to do with your boss being dominant. Like say if your boss was your buddy and he treated you as an equal, but he's the one paying you, then you
I
don't
don't know.
really
Okay,
have any
no,
incentive to
psychologically
make an
speaking,
effort.
you're straight up wrong. There is so much data on like reinforcers and positive reinforcement and how that is so much more likely to get a person to do things that you want them to do versus like negative reinforcement and punishing. Okay. So if you are literally like, making a person feel good, making them feel happy, they are much more likely to go the extra mile than the idea of like, oh, your boss is going to punish you if you don't. Like I don't mean to be a bitch, but this is not up to debate. This is like a psychological fact that positive reinforcement goes miles ahead than negative reinforcement or punishment.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
kind of agree. I would kind of agree. Like, I think for relationships, sure, being dominant definitely is important, but for a boss relationship, I think it's a little different. Like my before I started doing what I do, I worked in solar sales, and my boss was a 5'2" redhead, and she was the nicest person ever. She never, was dominant or chastised me or whatever. And I would go above and beyond because she did so much for me. She was so sweet. She was so supportive. And I wanted to make sure that I made her look good when we had company meetings. I want to make sure that I hit my numbers. And that motivated me to way harder than if she was like, you got to do your shit or you're fired.
Just look at what is it, turnover rates with companies that treat their employees well versus not. There's a reason why Google puts so much money when it comes to keeping their employees happy, having them have unlimited meals, a very nice workplace, and it's because the happy employees stay longer, they work harder, rather than a punishing one.
But to be fair, it's different in a relationship for whether the dominance thing. I don't think it matters for a boss.
Well, here's something with relationships, right? I want to get your guys' thoughts on. I hear the debate all the time. In relationship, is it more about emotional connection or is it more about transaction? And why can't it be both? Relationships are both.
Well,
they're emotional and transactional.
Well, they play into each other. If you're not getting your needs met, it's going to be hard to be emotionally fulfilled and happy and have that level of investment.
Yeah, I would say Natty does everything she does for you, Alex, because she wants to. And because she has to. So let me explain. She wants to because she does love and respect you. But she also knows that you are the kind of guy that if she started just slacking off on everything and putting zero effort, you might let it slide for a little bit. But eventually, because you have standards and you're a man, you're going to be like, okay, what's going on? This is not cool.
I don't know. I mean, it depends. Like with the Lyme research or the watching manosphere shit. If you stop doing that, I wouldn't even bring it up. I don't expect her.
No, but you keep focusing on those specific things. But I'm saying it's not just those specific things, but it's that she's going to do something.
If she got fat or something, I would probably be
imagine tomorrow she literally just starts putting zero effort into the relationship, does nothing for you.
That wouldn't work for me. Sure.
I think everybody has
so that has to do having standards for the other person. That means you're in charge. You're the leader.
I'm saying
she has standards for him too. That doesn't mean that is she suddenly the leader because she has standards. Just having standards for someone doesn't make you a leader or not.
Yeah, I agree with Pxie on that. Yeah, she definitely has standards for me for sure. If I get violent or I get super simpy,
her standard is don't beat me up.
Okay, so
guys and girls have standards for each other.
Alex, this is a tough standard to live up to.
So being simpy, that's treating her as an equal. So that makes my point. You just said if you're a super simpy, it wouldn't work.
On a pedestal. It's not equal. It's a pedestal.
Okay, God, I like it when girls put me on a pedestal. But if I put a girl on a pedestal, it wouldn't work, right?
I mean, some girls want to be put on a pedestal. Just generally speaking, though, most people don't want to be put on a pedestal because it's fucking weird. It's you're not seeing me as a human.
I love it when girls put me on a pedestal.
Okay, I think
gains and points, if anything.
I think most people, when they're put on a pedestal, they realize you're liking an idealized version of me, and that means the higher I am, the higher the pedestal, the more likely you are to fall off it. Just saying. So you might like that. But I think people in general want to be in a relationship with someone who actually views them as a human, who doesn't view them as an idealized doll.
I don't know, I don't know how many guys in the chat would that turn you off if a girl was doing you a lot of favors, showing a lot of interest.
There's a difference between that and a pedestal. A pedestal is
okay. That's what I meant.
I think you are perfect. I think you are basically like a god, right? That's a pedestal.
I'm actually taking Cold Steel's side on this. I think this actually shows a big difference between men and women's psychology because if a man put a woman on a pedestal in a relationship, the woman would lose respect and be turned off. But if it's reversed, the man's actually going to be super happy. If you have a woman treating you like a god, that you're going to love that. That's just
I've had girls show a lot of interest.
Go ahead,
and
I want to
be super nice.
What is it?
I loved it. Well, if I did that to a girl, it would turn her off.
Okay, again, there's a difference between showing interest and pedestal. There's some women who want to be put on a pedestal as well. I don't think that's fair to say the general population. No, that's not semantics. It's true. There's some women who want to be idealized as well. We're speaking about like the general population, and I feel like it's even like a trope, the whole like overbearing girlfriend, because that becomes overbearing, right? If she's like nonstop sending texts, like nonstop, like, you know, trying to be at your house, like doing shit, like it's like, holy shit, like this girl like cannot, you know, breathe without me there. Like that is a trope for a reason.
Yeah,
No,
I
I'm
do.
talking.
We're going on 3 hours, so let's get into like final closing thoughts, and then let's try to wrap up. So let's start off with you, Brad, then you, Cold Steel. You can give your final thoughts on this like topic, because I do want to end, because I got to shoot more videos tonight and whatnot. Okay, go ahead, Brad.
Okay. Yeah, like always, I caught the last 10 minutes, so I have zero context of the debate. But I will say I'm a big fan of Fresh and Fit and the Red Pill, but they do. I agree with most of what they say, but they do get some stuff wrong. I think being romantic to a woman is very important. I don't think it makes you a simp to be a romantic gentleman, as long as you have a backbone and you're still a man and you're not a pussy. I think pleasing a woman in the bedroom is very important. Um, I think
Myron thinks
relationships.
vaginas are disgusting.
I disagree with that. I think relationships are two human beings that are loving each other, respecting each other, and I think I do believe in conservative patriarchy and things like that, but I think sometimes the red pill can lose sight of making the woman happy as well.
Yeah, for sure. Fair enough. Okay, Cold Steel.
Yeah, I think I did. Well, now that you mentioned romantic, I disagree with the concept of being romantic. That's blue pill. You ever notice how
Oh, bro.
how
Okay, go
romantic?
ahead.
You know, that's how
I'm
romantic
so blue
gestures are
pilled.
always. Yeah, romantic gestures are always one way. It's always a man buying the woman gifts,
Well, that's
giving the
not
woman gifts and
true.
money. Man taking the woman to and
Well, that's
treating the
not
woman to dinner at an expensive restaurant.
Okay,
that's not
Cold
true.
Steel. Let
Like
me ask
in
you,
my
Cold Steel.
relationship, I've done romantic gestures for my girlfriend. She's done for me. I don't know if I've done more than her. I think it's been like about equal. But yeah, we've both
Yeah.
done very nice things for each other.
Okay, can I ask Cold Steel real quick?
Uh,
You agreed with me earlier, right? That men love it when a woman basically worships them, treats them like a god. You agreed with that, right?
yeah.
So if a woman's doing that, wouldn't you want to return the favor? Wouldn't you want to be romantic to her, to make her
Not
smile, to make her laugh, to make her happy?
not in the same way. Not by like giving her gifts or
What's wrong with giving a woman a
grand
gift?
gestures of like simp behavior. They get turned. I might get turned on by that, but women get turned off by that.
Well, it really
So,
depends on the context. But if it's like, dude, like in my situation, if it's a girl we've been dating for 3 years and you get her a very nice gift for her, like I got my girlfriend a very nice gift for her birthday, I can tell you she was not turned off by that. She was very, very excited, you know. But again, I'm not getting her gifts every day. We've been together for a while. It's not some random chick. It's a girl I've been dating, right? So it depends on the context. But in certain contexts, like getting a girl a gift or doing nice things for them, that's not going to turn them off. It's going to, if anything, it's going to do the opposite.
I mean, there's a closing thought that the saying "nice
Okay,
guys
no.
finish last" exists for a reason, and I think like the 30% of guys not getting laid are the guys that are nice guys. They're not like weird or creepy or weird. They're like nice guys that treat the woman like as an equal, and that just doesn't literally doesn't work because like they're not equal. Like if a woman's moderately attractive, their guy's constantly hitting her up, while the guy he has to be the one constantly hitting the women up. So it's not equal.
Well, not in like
Being a nice guy doesn't work.
well, no, of course not. I agree with you on that. But you can be a kind partner without being a nice guy, right? Nice guy is typically implies like even like you're not even in a relationship when you're like a nice guy in a situation. But like yeah, like doing kind things for like your partner, that's not being a quote unquote nice guy, and that's not gonna work against you in any way. So there's nothing simpy about like you've been dating a girl for 3 years and you decide to get her do something really nice for her birthday. That's not simpy. That's just like showing your appreciation, your love, in a way.
Yeah, I just want to. I know you're wrapping up. I just have to say this, man. Cold Steel, if you ever have a romantic night with a woman where you're both like worshiping each other, like just being super romantic to each other, like smiling, laughing, all that kind of stuff, that is literally one of the best feelings on earth. Like it does not make you blue pill. Like Yeah.
Well,
I
it's
think
not, it's not as good as debating a random black pillar and like making them look like a retard, but it's second. It's second.
I think oh, I'll let you finish your closing statement. And then
no,
I'll go.
yeah. Just well, I have my idea of having a good time on a date would be like doing a fun activity, and since the activity was my idea, that positions me as a leader. And like if it's an activity that's fun and the woman's participating, that's what makes it fun. So
But there's a big difference between getting a girl a gift on the first date and getting a girl a gift when you've been dating her for 2 or 3 years. Like I would say in like my relationship right now, like at this point, I'm not constantly the one like, we got to do this and this and this. My girl won't be like, hey, what do you think about we doing this? I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Right. So it doesn't need to be like in the early stages. Yes, definitely. I was like the one that was like hitting her up more. But I would say nowadays, either it's equal or she hits me up more than I hit her up, right? Like, or maybe it's probably equal, somewhere about equal. So yeah, I mean, I just think it depends on what point of the relationship you're in. Is it the very early stage, or have you actually been together for a while? Okay, anyway, let's let Pxie give her closing statements.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, it kind of goes back to the whole idea of what I said, nice guys aren't really nice. So I think this happens a lot that they think like, oh, you see, like I bought her a gift for the first date and she didn't appreciate it enough. And you see, like, girls just don't care about nice guys, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, she probably sensed that you wanted to, like, do something with her, or that's the impression she got, right? That you were, like, hoping for more. And that probably put her off more than just, like, the gift itself, right? Because that's what a lot of guys do. They put like all this expectation on like, oh, if I do this gift or if I do this date, then she's gonna have sex with me, or she's gonna want to be in a relationship with me. And for a lot of girls, that's like, okay, like you don't even really know me. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is like a lot. So I think the whole idea that nice guys finish last, I don't necessarily agree with it. I think it's more nice guys are not as nice as they think they are. I think men and women do. I think women do put effort into a relationship. I agree that most women expect men to put in the initial push, be the first ones to like approach, stuff like that. But I think like once you start dating, like if she likes you, obviously she's in a relationship with you, it's gonna be a lot closer to 50-50 in the sense like, oh, she's gonna want to make some decisions, she's gonna want to do some dates, and she's not gonna think that you're some like beta cuck because you treat her nice. Chances are she's gonna leave you if you don't treat her nice, unless if she was in an abusive relationship beforehand, which is a whole other story.
No, I'm not saying. Can I rebut real quick? That's like going to the extreme, like giving a gift on the first date. But I'm just talking about like say if you just go to dinner at a restaurant and watch a show or something, but she literally made no effort in that. She's just being treated by you. I think while there's other guys constantly hitting her up.
Well, I think dinner dates are not optimal, but she's not going to think you're a simp because you guys went out for dinner.
But it's not.
It's not optimal for different reasons, but it's pretty socially accepted. Like, yeah, you go out to dinner for the first date. I don't know. I don't think it's like the girls assume you're a simp. I mean, if you're taking her to like the fanciest restaurant ever, then maybe that's a different story. But yeah, I don't know. But anyway, we're almost at the 3 hours mark. Pxie, do you want to plug your channel or anything else?
Yeah, I usually stream on Twitch, Pxie, but for my Instagram, it's PXIELOVE, Pxie Love, and for my Twitter, it's Pxie Love with 2 E's at the end. It used to be 1, and then I got my account banned, so that's why I am now just Pxie Love there.
What did you get your account banned for?
I a couple years ago pretended to be Tucker Carlson and wrote a tweet saying communism is good. That got a little bit. I'm not even a communist, just being clear, but I just thought it'd be really funny, which it was. I thought it was hilarious. It just got me banned. Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, cool. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. I thought we had a really good discussion. I think we agreed a lot more than people thought we would, but hey, those are fun as well. So yeah, let's do another one of these, maybe with you know what we should do? I should set up a debate with you against someone who's like a hardcore red pillar.
I would love that.
Yeah. Let's talk about it offline. I can make that happen.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
For sure. All right, guys, everybody. Have a
All
good
right,
night.
thanks, guys.
Love you all.